order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I added to the agenda, I found it kind of clumsy, the way we were doing attendance, so I figured we could just cut and paste this in each week. It's a roll call. So Sherry, do you want to do the roll call each week? I guess you can do it. I think they're in alphabetical order. Okay.
Sherry Ockery, here.
Okay.
Jeff Karen,
Here.
Jay Edwards,
Here.
Thomas Haley,
Here.
Ruth Hollenbach,
Present.
Deborah Janik,
Here.
Jennifer Jocelyn, Justin LaCroix, Brendan McNally,
Here.
Jennifer Rashley, Joseph Souza.
I just got a text message from Justin LaCroix, and he is, I think he's okay, but he's having some kind of a medical test and said he's hooked up to a bunch of wires. He's fine. He's just doing something. I don't know. So he just said he couldn't make it. So, so be it. He's fine, though. So he'll be here next week, he said.
He's being recharged.
Yeah, he's getting charged up or something. He's fine. But he is in some sort of a medical issue, so. And we know that Jennifer Jocelyn was going to be away. She said that last week. Great. So, I made a mistake already. Does anyone know what it is? Nope. Oh, maybe I did, but
What else?
the bigger mistake.
Let's see.
I need to entertain a motion to add something to
that's
the
right.
agenda.
Yeah,
What is it?
public.
A public discussion, yes. So I will do that. I'll entertain a motion to add public discussion to the agenda.
And I missed it too, sorry.
So who's going to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to add public discussion to the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, did you get that vote, Sherry? Okay, so, we now have public discussion on the table. I will ask if any members of the public would like to speak. Any members of the public like to speak?
Just get in line orderly, please.
Be respectful.
Last chance, okay? I'm going to end the public discussion. We'll end that section of the agenda. Thank you, everyone. So, the next item on the agenda will be the discussion of the town clerk's budget. And I'll call forward the town clerk, Nancy Mello. And I want to thank Nancy for her patience last week, which I know we pushed at. But thank you very much, Nancy, for coming back tonight.
I do want to give to the secretary, Joe, this is your recusal form, and it was filed, but you should keep that with you.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
We filed the original.
I just want to make sure that I, and I'm sure everyone on the committee does, has the correct documents, and I'm going to probably be the last one to find them, because I always am. Is it a separate document? I think you handed out a separate
Yeah,
Right.
document, right, initially?
it's got probate on it.
It should look like this.
It looks
Yeah, I
like it's
remember.
the same one that's in the book.
Yeah,
With the-
I gave it to the administrator. so
Okay.
it'll be
No,
in
there's
the
more
book.
pages in her.
The-
her-
Right, but the
It's
top
just-
one,
More pages in her packet than are in the book.
Town clerk's
that's
department,
because
is
they're
that it?
different, they're different lines.
Multiple accounts,
They're
like the
different.
probate
Put
and
a
some of the other.
summary on the top.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Everyone ready to rumble? Okay.
Okay, so I'm reading off the little packet I gave you, which should be individually in the So how about if we start with our probate budget first? Does it matter which way you go?
Well, just because the agenda is a certain way, do you mind following it, or does it mess you
I
up?
don't care, I don't have it in front of me, so you want me to do the
Just,
clerk? first?
just because I'm trying to be squeaky clean,
That's fine.
if that's okay. The first one is town clerk's budget, so
Okay,
then we don't have to have any oddness in that.
so the department salary, I have included a 2% increase there. The staff salary, I'll do last because I've added a position there, or a pot position. The longevity, that's contractual. I have 3 full-timers that receive longevity. The recording expenses, I kept level, and I did base it on my 5-year averages and where I stood this year on it. So, stamp tax, if you follow the revenue reports, I don't know if you get the revenue and the expense reports, but if you do, you'll see the stamp taxes and stuff are up because there's been a change in the open space portion. And the recording fees are about the same. We'll hit our mark. We should hit our mark, but they're about the same, so I'm keeping the expense to it the same. Recodify, I've increased it from 10,000 to 11,000, to 15,000, and that is because they're gonna be working on the comp plan and bringing all that into agreement with the zoning, so there's gonna be more to codify. So that's where that estimate comes from. I don't even think that will be enough, but I don't think they can get everything done in 1 year, so I'm kind of pacing it that way as well.
That's subbed out. That's something that we do outhouse, right?
But we do it with MuniCode down in Florida,
Okay.
which is where most,
Trying to remember, I know you told me, but if you can
yeah.
refresh my memory.
it's
says-
through MuniCode.
So as council adopts new,
We can send them right away. We got backlogged with
so it
not
gets
getting
re-
clean
revised
copies.
like our land use and planning code,
Any
information.
ordinance any amendment to an ordinance or an ordinance that the council adopts, it could be no parking on the side of a certain street, that's in our ordinance book, it's an amendment to it. I have to send it down to be codified. There's a very big portion going down now.
All right, I remember now.
Yeah.
I know you had told me several times, but I keep forgetting.
And if they do a rewrite, they do have some money in the budget this year to begin the process, but they're supposed to be doing a zoning overhaul. It's gonna create a lot of, the advertising and it's obviously more expensive each year to get this stuff codified. So, supplies, I believe I kept the same. And, I did. And I know I've explained it to the budget committee before, but for the benefit of the new members, because, under the clerk, I have the, Board of Canvas and the probate. This year, I'm not handling the expense of the municipal court because that's under the police department. Because we couldn't get through their service to get the e-ticketing and all this. So there's now a person there that handles it. So, but I do interchange them, like if I need paper, it doesn't matter whether I need it for the probate or for the Board of Canvas. I'm gonna take it out of whatever supply account I have in that office. The photocopier, I'm sorry to say, is really on its last leg. We keep it down because we own the copy machine, and we only have to pay, I think it's $1,000 something a year, other than these breakdowns, but last week we had several days we didn't even have the we couldn't tell what we were copying or how to do it because the image thing was down. And they cannot get pots for us anymore, so we are really on our last leg. But the administrator does want to consider this in with his technology accounts. So when I come back in March with the final budget, if there's any change to this, I will address it at that time.
Can I just ask a question on that one? So photocopier lease, so it's not a lease, we own it, you said?
We now own it.
It used to be,
Yes,
maybe it was a lease back in the
We-
day.
It was
Okay.
leased, and then we bought it for $1 at the end of the
Right,
lease.
okay.
And it really is a workhorse in there, I have to tell you,
Mhm.
the stuff we're.
This is the one right here
proud of
that
it.
everyone uses.
That's this one, yes,
Yeah.
that everything is copied off of.
What are we
And,
talking about for a new copy machine? It's like, what, $14,000?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't really looked into a new one. We've always leased.
Yeah, I'm just.
all of them.
Well, I mean,
But-
if you are leasing it, I'm saying the total,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
But it would be higher than the 4,500, I can tell you, a lease
Yeah.
for a year.
but I'm saying. I
Because
still
we were paying
understand.
like 7,000 and 8,000
It
before.
might be worth looking to see if, I mean, don't wait until somebody does a plan. Maybe you should come with us some prices before we finish the
Well-
budget, and then we can maybe put it in there.
Yeah, I did intend to do that, but the administrator has asked that I,
It's a small
you know,
item.
wait for
It's
him
not-
to come up with whatever he's gonna do. I think there are other departments that might be in my predicament.
Yeah, I know,
But until then, we'll just keep running it, but it's gonna stop, and I'm gonna have to immediately get something, and I can't go without a copy machine
I mean,
in there.
you're making copies for every committee on that machine, so, I mean, that's like the major machine, you know. Going downstairs,
Oh, yeah.
breaking.
We're doing
come up
thousands
and-
of copies a day.
That's what I'm saying, you know, that machine runs the town basically, as far as committee and town, council and things like that, so, in our books.
Well, I do have to come back on, well, whenever, after
we'll
March
talk
6th
about
with my
that.
final budget, and I will try to get better arrangements on that.
Yeah, call copyboard.
I have a question. I have a question on the copier.
Yes.
The whole paper system, I mean, we're really supposed to be going more and more paperless, and you're talking about the technology being upgraded, so why would that even need any copier? I mean, I can understand you need it for certain documents, I understand, but it's just that I'm not sure that you need maybe as a workhorse as you may have needed in the past, because, I mean, we are going more paperless, and the technology's getting better, so can you give me examples of where you absolutely have to have a paper copy, other than agendas, things like that, the business of town, in the town, where you have to have paper? Why can't you just email people and, it's legal, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
Nancy, yes.
Well, for one thing, we're not paperless yet, because
Mhm.
our council gets copies of all backup, everything that goes through there. I mean, that thing is just going, all vital records go through there, all copies of programs go through there. Board of Election runs, we run our books off everything. I mean, that thing runs all day. I wish, but we tried getting those small pads for the council, but it, you know, unless you got every counselor a
Nancy?
iPad, a laptop, you're gonna have a hard time going.
Is there any other town that's making progress on this that you know of around us that we could just look at?
Some of them with council are paperless.
Can you tell me
And
which?
we do scan and send the backup to each counselor as well. But when they're up there, they like the papers in there.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
different boards and commissions, and, I mean, they are all volunteers, they shouldn't be, and I've never refused any of them coming in and making copies.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what town it is you were thinking about, that you were?
I know Portsmouth is paperless,
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure. about
Chair.
other towns.
Excuse me, can we do what we had spoke
Yeah,
of with the questioning?
Yeah, and I kind of botched up the rule there because I asked the question initially. So what I'm going to try to do is, I thought about this last time, over the week, actually. So, and I sort of broke my own rule there, but what I'd like to do is, we'll let the clerk go through maybe this section, what is it, 8 or 9 accounts, and when she's gone through her piece, and again, I broke my own rule, I was gonna go around and do the round robin then. So I think that would be a way to do it, where we could, try to bite off more than one line at a time.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm for questions, I mean. Where are you at,
Other than the
Nancy?
staff salary, right now I have 3 full-timers and 1 part-timer. And I don't know how many of you were on the council, but when we sent the daily duties of the ticket process to the police department, I dropped down a half a clerk and said, we will try this. And I think some of the members on
Yeah.
I said, I'm gonna try doing this and see how it works out, but I can tell you if it doesn't work, I'm gonna come back. Well, last year, we had some elections, and it was just horrific. I had to bring in untrained help to get me through some of the work, and it was very difficult. I cannot operate that, especially when I look forward to the coming year with a presidential preference primary and a presidential primary and general election. There's no way they're gonna get through that. The demands on Board of Canvas is more and more. The training to it, they'll be starting June, July of this year, they'll start training. I'll have to send 2 people up to the state every other week or so, or at least a month, and then every 2 weeks to get training and all. I can't operate in there without, we're gonna slip up and something's gonna happen. And what happens is I take more and more of the work on myself, and I can't do that now. So, one of the problems I have is I have no deputy clerk, and I've got to get a deputy clerk in there. I don't have someone that can handle the work that I do. Now, those clerks are efficient in handling their recordings and their vitals and stuff like that. But the probate, I still get bogged down with the decision-making and everything that goes on beyond the actual clerical work, which I shouldn't be putting my time into. It's just bogging the position of clerk down. I'm the only community in the state of Rhode Island without a deputy clerk. And I find that part of my own fault. Instead of taking on this stuff, I should have already had a trained clerk in there. So this year in the budget, what I've put in for, and what I'm hoping for, is the appointment of a deputy clerk. Now, I personally would like the deputy clerk to be non-union. It's not in any contract now, and I don't want it to be in a contract, because I want that clerk to be able to handle things that I handle. So if I'm not here and somebody's gotta go in executive session, I want that clerk to be able to do that. Or because I deal with a lot of sensitive information from council, I want that deputy to be able to handle it. And beyond that, I need the deputy to be able to sign the documents as I sign them, because they would have the same ability and the same authority in my absence to sign. And I don't have anybody to do that now. I'm going on vacation in April, and anything that has to be signed for probate's gonna wait till I come back. Or anything that really needs my signature, there's no one in there that can take that responsibility.
So that's like death certificates and.
Oh, no, those are vital records, and they use my stamp on that. That's not my original signature on those. No,
Court and.
they can handle that stuff, but probate, no, it takes an original signature that waits till I'm there. And it can be anything for the town that needs signing. There's just no one with authority beyond me in there, and it's really not good. Who's gonna follow through? I mean, you need somebody, and you also need somebody that knows that end of the job more than the clerical end. So, what I'm contemplating and what I'm hoping to do is get somebody on a salary basis, because that person would be taking over the open session anyway of the council minutes. And if I could get somebody salaried, I wouldn't be paying the overtime. Now, I don't know if it's a possibility to do it that way, but that's what I'm hoping for. Because right now, these clerks are paid $23.03, and the town clerks get paid $24.08. When I'm paying her overtime, and rightfully so, nobody's gonna come to these meetings and take minutes and not be paid, compensated for it. But when I'm paying her overtime, it's something like $30-some, and I could get, I'm paying $35.58 an hour overtime. And it's worth it, because she then has to type the minutes during the day, and that takes her time too. What I'm hoping to do is try to get a job description on a deputy clerk that might be salaried. And if instead of paying 24-something an hour, I have to pay 26 an hour, but I'm not paying overtime, I'd still be ahead of the game. Or the town would be ahead of the game. They would be in a big way.
Yeah.
Ahead
There
of the game.
would be a savings.
So that's why you're gonna see that, on my request, it's $162.50. But I have to tell you, if I look at my last 5 years, and that's, I was at 132,687 5 years ago. Then it was 152,066, 156,561, 156,961, and then this year's 144,473, because I am only with a half person. You can't make it with a half person. That half person has to go up to full. And I think if I put a little added to it and made it a deputy, I think the town would be far better off for it.
So do you think you foresee the salary like at what we're paying overtime now?
Well, a full-time clerk right now, my senior full-time clerk, and she does oversee the vital records, the recordings, she oversees that end of the, is paid $40,695. I'm gonna have to at least pay $45,000 to get someone to come nights and do these council meetings.
So is that how you determine the new figure
That's
for
how we determine the new
that?
figure, yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, sorry to go backwards, but
Hang on, 1 second. Are you done with your presentation then?
Yeah, on clerks, yes.
So I'll start with Sherry, we'll go this way.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay.
okay, so my question is, do you have anybody that you have in mind for the deputy clerk that has some training in the office already? I mean, do you already have someone, or do you have to put that out like you would normally
We
for?
would still, I don't know whether we have to go to advertise, because we have 3 people that have already gone through the personnel board that we are using in temporary. But I'm not saying that's where that would go. There
Yeah.
would be a test for that position.
I just was wondering if there's a way to do like a salary raise, but I guess some of your employees are already unionized anyway, right?
All my employees.
Or unionized, okay.
But it would not stop one of my union employees from saying,
I want to
"Well,
leave
I'm
the,
gonna leave the union and take on a deputy clerk." So I would anticipate it would go to whatever, if something came up like that, and it would be a tested position.
okay. Thank you, that's all my questions.
So Nancy, just so I understand, you're currently staffed with 3 FTEs with 1 part-time.
Yes.
And then your requested state would be 4 FTEs. And the difference of bringing a part-time person up to this roughly
Yes,
45,000,
that's why you're not finding
right?
it. Yes.
And then you just cited, for the last 5 years, a bunch of numbers, 132,000, then 150. That would be what the salary line item was,
That would be
plus
what
the
was
overtime,
actually spent
including overtime?
salary. Yes.
Okay, great. So for us to look at in terms of where we've been, the request for FY '20 is looking for $7,500 in overtime. Right, so that's an increase. So it's both going to be looking for an increase in bringing a part-time position up to a full-time, And then it's also anticipating that there's gonna be overtime, correct?
Well, depending upon what I would need for a salaried clerk, but if it was not a salaried clerk, if it, deputy,
Mhm.
if it was a deputy that was paid hourly through there, I would still have to pay.
Then the overtime kicks in.
So hopefully, I will be presenting my request to the council as well, just so everybody's on
Mhm.
the same page. And by the time I come back in March, I probably would have better handle on that, but that's not, those numbers are pretty in the ballpark, very close. It would depend whether it was salary or overtime.
So you're looking to take that part-time and make part-time full-time? Or add a
I
full-time?
don't know what other positions are coming up in the town. I'm only saying that it would be a full-time deputy in the clerk's office.
So
And I
right,
would not have the necessary for a part-time
Part-time,
position as
okay.
well.
so we'd go from 3 full-time plus 1 part-time to 4
4
full-time
full-time.
and not the part-time.
Right.
And then, do you think that some of the overtime, I know you have, right now, you have someone comes to the council, so it's kind of planned overtime, you know, they're going to be in overtime. Do you think some of it was because you were down half a position and a lot of it was with the election?
What I had to do for that was go to the council and request $6,000 to be able to hire a temporary to get in there and help us through, because I also had someone that was out on surgery for several weeks. I have someone going on surgery again for 8 weeks or so, and I'm gonna be down again. But the election process creates a lot of overtime for these girls. There's just a lot of added time that's necessary. They can't get out of here at 4 o'clock in election times. And that election time creeps up. It's not the week of the election. It's before then as well. Now, if it is relative just to the election, that comes out of the election account. That is charged to the election account for that process. However, if it's because I sent them up to the state for training, and that is continual, and you've gotta send 2 people up there, they've got to be trained, the state just keeps changing those mandates on you. That I have to pay them for, and that, I don't take that out of the election accounts, unless it's done right during the election period, because that's a restricted account.
So the budget that was approved for 2019, you had to transfer money in just to,
I had to, yes, I couldn't make it on it.
okay. Thank
Not
you,
for health-wise,
Yeah.
not for employee-wise.
thank you.
Nancy, so the 4 full-time, is one of those full-time your deputy clerk?
Yes, of the 4 full-timers that I'm projecting
If you want,
next year,
yeah, if
it
you
was
got your 4 full-time that you
Voted on,
wanted,
yes.
and then one of them would wear the hat deputy
one
clerk.
would wear the hat deputy clerk.
Okay, and that person would work a lot of evenings, because that's one of the goals, right?
Right.
The open sessions, and then that person would be here during the days, some of the time. Is that accurate?
No, they'd be here every day, because you come to a council meeting, you take the notes, you've gotta type up those minutes.
No, I understand, but I mean, wouldn't that end up being like 60 hours a week or something, or some,
Well, no, it wouldn't be 60
or
hours a
whatever
week,
it would
'cause
be? and
they work 8:30 to 4, they work 32 and a half hours a week.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
it could be 40 hours a week, yes.
Okay, all right.
Could be 40 instead of 32 and a half.
Fair enough. I guess that was my point. I was just using amplified numbers. Okay, so I got that question answered. The other thing was this recodify the town. I mean, so there's one company down there, this always was kind of a pet peeve of mine, that we use, and everyone seems to use them, and it sounds like they have a monopoly on this. So what are the numbers we've used in the past? My memory escapes me, but I mean, just in general, like, were they numbers like 5,000 or were they numbers like 30,000? I'm just trying to go back, like, in time.
We've used 6,000, 5,000, 11,000. I mean, we use different amounts because it depends whether we've actually sent everything that year. We had a 2-year period where we needed to get clean versions of all these ordinances. And it, one solicitor left and another solicitor came on board, and when they approved them, I have to get the clean copies and everything before we can get down. So we went a year without sending anything to be codified.
So what is it? I guess I missed it. So what, you said it, and I apologize, but this is a big number then, compared to history. I'm just trying to understand, what drives it so high to where we think it's gonna be as high as 15?
What is gonna drive it this year is the comp plan has just been approved. And they are going to go out to RFP to be able to hire a consultant to help get the zoning laws into compliance with the comp plan. You only have a year, I think you have a year to do that. They're not gonna do it all in 1 year, but there's gonna be a lot more to send down to be codified than there usually is. Normally, it's just whatever the course of amendments to ordinances or, go through the council in the course of the year. But when you have something like a zoning overhaul or a comp plan, it's going to create a lot more being sent down. It's not cheap anymore.
Yeah, I understand. My final question, are you just estimating on that, like, based on how thick you think the paper's gonna be, or did you get a quote, or is that just like?
No, because I wouldn't know which
Right.
ones, but they did give a list of different ordinances that were gonna have to be amended to get to there. So it's more than what we normally do in the course of a year.
Who did I say it to? We're in the wrong business. Okay, I'm all done, thank you. Ruth?
Is the training on here, the budget for training, a separate line item here anywhere?
You mean when I send them to the board
Yeah.
of canvases for training?
Wouldn't it be
No.
on, normally,
No.
I thought they did have a training line item for training, okay.
Not on
It's
mine,
just
I don't
included
know.
in the,
Yeah,
where,
if I have to send someone to train, for training and stuff,
Yep.
and then the other ones don't end up going to lunch.
where's the line item that includes the training? I'm just trying to ask you.
It's just in the salaries.
In the salaries, okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for the training.
Not for the state training you don't pay for.
I thought you said something about
Other training you do, but not that.
okay. Okay, so it's not something you have
Yeah.
to pay for. Okay, but that takes out of their workday, right, the time?
Takes out of their workday, so you've got to cover that, and you've got to, in most cases, when I have to send 2 out to training, because I only have another part-timer, the other girl can't go to lunch. Her and I have to cover, because we do not close for lunch, because we have attorneys in there all day doing recordings and things like that, so
I know the
we can't
feeling.
stop a recording and restart, so.
You're in the same boat as a lot of us. The company in Florida, I wonder if is there any other company you can use? Jeff mentioned he didn't have a good feeling about this company, and, no? Okay.
Just as a monopoly,
It's
that's
not
all.
Okay, the monopoly, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there
It's not the
any-
efficiency of the company, it's the fact that that's where everybody goes, that's, Muni code is national, and it just,
Okay, and then, what brand is that copier again?
oh, I don't know.
Okay, I'll ask that later.
It is
Last
something
thing
else.
is, what? Xerox?
It was by Conacher, I think is who we leased from.
Okay, thanks. Last thing, the part-time workers, part-time people, Westport is trying to hire more part-time people. That way they do not have to pay certain types of benefits, and they get the same amount of work done. And that's something they consciously tried to do. I've been saying it for a couple of years now, and not your deputy, but others could be easily part-time. People like, at certain times in their lives, they may like a part-time job rather than full-time. You know, you're saying sometimes it's pretty exhausting, so, I mean, is there any way you could at some point, divide one of these full-time positions and have 2 part-timers? Is that something that you could ever suggest? That's what
That's
other
a
towns are
union.
doing. Mhm.
I think that would be a union issue. I would still need two in the place of one, I can tell you, because I can't get it done with a part-timer.
Yeah, yeah.
But that would be a union.
So I'll check and see if
Problem.
Westport has
Yeah.
union issues with that. I was just curious. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Nancy, very good job. Since I'm brand new here, I don't know what longevity is. Could you explain that to me?
Longevity is a percentage of their pay that they are paid for the number of years that they have worked for the town. So I have one of, and you have to be full-time to get longevity. I have one full-time with 5 years in, so she gets 3% of her salary as longevity.
Let's see.
I have one with 10 years in, she gets 5% of the salary. And I have one with 15 years in, and she receives 6% of the salary. So that number is projected to what the salary would be, and it's contractual. I don't have a-
I'd see. And so, no matter what their salary is, or they get this added percentage.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
depending on the number of years, it
Right,
escalates.
as you described. Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Jay?
Nope, as usual, Nancy has come well prepared.
Joe?
Well, that, if you make a note, please try to find out about that, a copy.
Yep.
You know, it's just about going paperless. With the amount of backup, I think that has to come on, and I tried it when I was on the council to just use it like that, and you continuously having to flip pages, whereas I could have 6 pages laid in front of me,
No, I-
and go right to them, so it's kinda hard, and I tried it, but it is kinda hard to do the whole meeting online, so, on your computer. And, as things get better, maybe, the screens will move quicker. I probably don't have the most advanced computer either. I only paid $165 for it, but I'm just saying that, it is kind of hard, so that copier is kind of the lifeblood of this town. Every committee uses every.
Right, you're looking at me, so it's not only the meeting minutes, but other things that could go paperless. That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
earlier.
Oh. You all set, Joe?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, great.
Nancy's doing a good job as usual.
Thank you. So, with that being said, we should probably move on to the Board of Canvassers budget. That would be next on the agenda, listed as item 5. Excuse me. Item 5.
Okay, so, you will like this one. The Board of Canvassers has actually, that one has been reduced by 20,000.
Hooray.
And the only reason that is being reduced is because we have kept it on a schedule where we do, last year, we put 40,000 in. This year, we're doing 20. We're trying not to get such high peaks and valleys, but for the year that this budget is covering, from July to the following June, I will have a presidential preference primary in February. But even though we're geared up and we stop the expense of the general primary in September and the election is in November, it will be of 2020, so I'll be more focused. We'll have to go back to our 30 or 40,000 that year. But I think for this year, it just keeps replenishing. That is a restricted election account, and it replenishes it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to do this. Can someone take over notes for me? I have to go.
Would you be able to do that, Tom? Okay. Thank you. You gotta run? Okay. So we just want to note it was 8:45. Sorry, 7:45?
7:45.
7:45, thank you. Okay, are you done with that presentation, or would you like to?
Yeah, everything else remains level funded from this year, and it looks like it's been that way for a couple of years. Our main expense on that is really the elections.
Okay. I'll start with Joe. Joe, do you have any questions on this one? Jay?
No.
How much do they pay the election workers? That man,
You're
the-
talking about the poll workers, or are you talking about the Board of Canvas members?
no, not the board of canvas, the people that sit and help at the elections and people who do things at the elections.
We actually are on the low end of the scale on that. We pay our supervisors, which are the ones that are at the table that you go in and check. I believe we pay them $70 for the day. We pay our clerks, which has the biggest job there. I believe we pay them, oh, yes, I believe we pay them $80. And the moderators, which are the ones by the voting machines, we pay them $80.
Okay, yeah, and that, I don't have a problem with that because it's actually,
It's a
A
long
semi-
day for them. They have to
but-
set up,
but-
take down.
I understand, but it is somewhat of a volunteer basis because they're saying, I would like to do this, and,
Yeah.
it's not like
We do
it's.
provide meals for them.
Mhm.
Generally, the parties chip
Okay.
in a certain amount, and then we only provide the dinner. And we have volunteers pick it up and bring it to them. I can tell you, we went to a meeting on this prior to this election. There are communities that give them, for goodness sakes, Middletown actually serves them breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right, but
So
just,
it's tough.
just
It's
to
tough
know-
to get them.
So is it?
right, but I think there are people who they put their name in for this, right? You go get, what do you mean it's difficult to get
We have
that?
to advertise for them and all. We use.
You always get enough, though, it seems like, do you?
Barely, we have to kind of keep enticing people to sign up. They come in that clerk's office, they're gonna get
So that,
about.
that could be a letter to the editor, just to,
Yeah.
or, someone could publicize it more. Yeah, thank you.
They're not fighting in line to do it, Ruth.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we need to drum it up, yeah, if possible.
Oh, we put it out in the schools. We've made posters that we need you. We've done,
Okay,
we do try to do things, but it is difficult because we're not on the high end of the scale.
Right,
But we're
and-
not on the
and-
low end either.
and we're not also just the same as a Middletown or a Portsmouth either, so we have to realize that, yeah. Thank you.
Do you remember any discussion about trying to just like, instead of going 2040, 2040, 2040, just setting it at 30 and every year? Do you recall any discussion of that? I don't, I haven't been around.
Yeah, we did. We were
enough.
gonna put 30,000 each year.
Just, yeah.
And last year we put 40, so I thought 20 was enough this year.
No, I understand.
Last year, we got a little nervous because of general election, we thought it would be. But as I still have in that account 52,000, I thought, why, come that presidential election, I'm gonna be using a lot.
I understand.
But I thought we were okay with the 20.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just had a question on that. Okay.
I'm all set.
And, Nancy, could you just, so in the request for the 25,
Oh,
obviously.
it says 25, yeah.
Right. The amounts that we end up spending cover the stipends for the day, if that's the right word, right? So you just talked about supervisors, clerks, moderators. That's what the account is used for, is in part to pay that. It's for the meals. What else is
The
in?
bulk of it is paying for the poll workers.
Mhm.
That's quite a chunk up there, because we use 70-some, 80 poll
Yep.
workers.
Mhm.
And we're paying the poll workers for the day. We only pay the dinner meal. We pay for the paper that the ballots are printed on. We
Mhm.
pay for the books to be printed. We pay for anything we need from there. We pay for the advertising out of there for all, the statute requires you to We pay for all the advertising for the election out of there. Anything at all that comes up, we pay a stipend of, it's only $250, but we pay a stipend to the VFW because they're closed for the day. You can't have other business in there. It's a lot of that. We had to get signs, new signs done up. We have to get handicap signs. The stanchions, the things they put it on. This past year, we actually, because the Board of Elections said now, instead of, we used to have those signs that, you know, if you wear A to D, you went in one line, can't do that anymore. They want you single-lined going down there, so we bought those stanchions to help with crowds, you know, at different times. So whatever is needed, we pay whatever we have to. If we have to use the DPW or the maintenance for overtime, we pay for police to be like Amicable Church. That's a very dark area. People park across the street. If we feel we need something like that, we cover that cost.
Great. So many items.
You know, I can't remember what else, but there is
That's okay,
a
no, that's
lot.
very helpful that there's,
That helps.
it's not just paying poll workers, it's
No.
many of these other
No,
things.
there's
Great.
a lot more.
Thank you.
The polls are usually open from what time to what time?
7 in the morning to 8.
And then the poll workers have to be there an hour before and an hour after. So it's really 6 to 9.
6 to 9, yes.
6
They have
and
to
at 6
stay till
a.m.
it's cleaned up.
So,
Sometimes they still
so
want
they're
it
there at least 15 hours.
at least.
And so they're getting a very modest stipend for a 15-hour day.
It is. It's a long time for some.
It's the equivalent of 2 days of work.
And you know, there's more, and that includes the training they go to. They have to go a separate night for training. Because remember, they're on those poll pads now. And a lot of them, you know, it takes training to do that.
How long does the training take?
The training takes 3 hours.
3
and
hours.
It's a separate night they have to go to, and that's
So-
all included in there.
So for a stipend of $70, they're putting in 20 hours for the town, approximately.
Probably close to it.
So they're not even making minimum wage even close.
Okay. I think that would conclude our discussion of that agenda item for the Board of Canvassers budget. And we should move on now to the discussion of the financial town referendum budget, which is item number 6 on the agenda.
Okay, that one is level, no change, level funded.
Okay?
And now that does not include any possibility of a runoff. But I believe last year on that resolution for the election account, it said it was restricted and it would include any, if it were necessary for runoff, it would come out of that election account. But I can tell you, when I look over the 5 years for that account, I've spent $13,000 one year, $11,800 another year, $10,792, $10,418. But I can tell you this, it generally covers, because we do 2 days of absentee voting, we call it here. So that staffs all that as well as whatever overtime is necessary in the clerk's office that we have to take out of there. And it's gonna happen anyway. If I have to take it out of one of the other accounts, it's gonna get done, so, you know,
Great.
I do what we have to do. So that is level funded.
Does anyone have any, I'm just going to be really brief on this one. Does anyone have any questions on the FTR? Okay, great. So we can move on to number 7, the discussion of the probate court's budget.
So the probate court has no change. The salary is the judge's salary, it's been that, and by the way, we are right in the middle on the judges' salaries too. Probate court, traditionally, they don't pay the judges much. He does put in an awful lot of work. He's very experienced at it. He's been doing it 25 years. He's very good at it, very compassionate with it. The recording expense, we scan all our probate records and we send them out to the ACS, to where our recordings go, so that it's kept off premise. Now, if it goes more than that, it's gonna go through my recording expense of clerk. If it's less than that, and they need the recording expense from there, it's interchanging. I think one year, maybe it was the last year, someone raised the question, why don't you take it out of there and increase your clerk recording? Well, I hesitate to do it, because it is an expense of probate, and it should be realized as an expense of probate. I don't want someone to think that doesn't necessarily need the recording. We have to keep those records on premise as well. The software is a set amount. She hasn't gone up since I've had it. And our supplies, sometimes we're short on it, but I take it out of clerks.
So you said this was level?
That's level funded.
Anyone have any questions on the probate budget?
No.
We all good? Okay, great. Okay, probate's done. We can move on to number 8, which is discussion of municipal courts budget.
Now, the charter still holds the clerk as the clerk of the municipal court, but the actual operations of that we used to do in the clerk's office is now done at the police station, because it's all e-ticketing now. And we cannot get through the police department's servers and security walls to get this information enough for us to be able to do it. They handle the information, they're used to it. I think they can be much more efficient doing it. So I believe Chief Jones has that budget included with his.
Can you point me to the right page?
Sure.
What we should be.
I'm actually, I'm looking for it too, and it appears as though it's not in this document.
Behind police.
Police.
Yeah, police, municipal court.
Yeah, but is it, do you have something in the actual?
No.
Yeah. So it would probably be in the package that the clerk gave us, I would imagine. Is that accurate?
No, because the expense of that clerk is under the police department.
Oh, okay, hold on.
So
So municipal
I'm
court's
sure
in
the
here, no, at all?
No.
Oh, the
Because
entire
the
amount
cost,
is in
the
there, okay.
salary for the municipal court judge,
Mm-hmm.
he's now gonna list it under his, and the clerk that is handling the work.
So it was a bit of a misnomer that I put it on this agenda then,
Well,
probably.
because I'm still considered the clerk of municipal.
Right, that's right, yeah,
court.
you have to wear the hat. I think we went through that. You
Yes,
have to still
I
wear the
have to
hat legally,
continue
right,
with the
right,
hat,
right,
but I don't have the
Right.
personnel that's
right,
performing the
right.
work.
Yeah, that's right, I remember that now.
Okay.
Somehow I remember that. Okay,
Um,
so we can, yeah, so there's really, unless we look in the, let me just look to Jan, just a sec, let me just look to Jan. Jan, is there something that you know of in the police budget that we can look at? All right, well, let's just look at it quickly and see if it makes sense to look at it.
It doesn't have anything.
Well, then that means you just look through the general document under municipal court. I think in the general document, they also follow the police.
And that would be at the beginning, right? That would be in like your,
So that's not legal services?
no,
No, it's,
Municipal
Court.
court following the police.
If you look at the budget,
it's
under
yeah.
municipal court, it'll give you line items like 5114, 5175, 7423.
Under,
There's
under
only-
nine-
there's only
19
five
six,
of them.
under 1960.
Thank you very much.
It's because we don't have page 8.
And it's level funded except for $500 for supplies.
$1,000 request for computer. So it's up $1,500.
So when you add it all up, it's like an 8% increase.
Okay, so, yeah, I was just gonna say, we can touch on it again. If it's a separate, maybe on, since he would, I guess, become the expert on that, so to speak, right? So, we could probably try to remember to, I put that on the agenda, if it's under a separate line item, on that night, right next to police budget. And if there's any specific questions, we can go there. So, are there, Nancy's hat, the clerk's hat on this is to wear the official title, the clerk, per charter. Does anyone have any questions for the official officiating person? And if not, I'll move on to the next item.
Do we need to, like, make a motion to move to this section, or you'll just?
No, I'll just re-agenderize it, if that's a word, I think, next time.
What did you say?
I made it up.
Okay.
I will re-agenderize it.
Agenda.
You all know what I meant?
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, when we touched on it this
I
time.
thought you said
It'll-
re-agenderized.
Oh, no, re-agend, I'm sorry.
I had to ask twice.
I just have one more comment to make on this. I had hoped that when you were scheduling your site visits, you would have scheduled a site visit to the town hall. And one of the things I think,
We are gonna do that, actually, yep.
because I really want to make sure that I'm here so you can see the vault.
Mm-hmm,
Because there are two accounts which are grants type accounts from the state. When we do recordings, $1 of every recording goes into a historical records account. It's a general law, and it is restricted to just use of restoring historical records in the municipal office there, and we have restored some books in there, and I gotta tell you, when you do books, you're talking thousands to restore a book. And there's and because that is an account that is restricted into that use, and there's state laws, what they are, I'd like you to see what's being done with that. And there is a second account from the recording as well. This is from recording, not from stamp tax. And it's 10%, and it goes to a technology account, and that is for technology used strictly for the recording of records and for the preservation of records. And we have really done quite a bit in that vault from where it was, and that money goes to good use. So when you do your tour on the town hall, I think you'd be interested in seeing the work that is done there and downstairs in the archives room. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
I'd really like to see those. I mean, look at the documents from the 1500s in Spain that were literally eaten through.
We have restored ripped up old things, and it's really something to see in it. And quite frankly, because I came from treasure and collector, I really didn't think much about records till I took on clerk. And I gotta tell you, I've really got a better respect for them now, so.
just for the record, and we're gonna talk about this at the end, but since you brought it up, in my notes, in my little schedule, which sometimes I put up here, I do have Saturday, February 23rd written down as, for site visits, library/town hall.
Oh, okay.
So, I've got to piggyback too, and that seemed reasonable to do those two.
So this is February 23rd?
Yeah, that's how I've
Okay.
got it piggybacking right now, so
Fine.
FYI. I mean, nothing's final till it happens, but that's sort of how it's shaking up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Nancy.
Nancy.
Nancy,
Okay, so next on our agenda is discussion of senior citizens service budget. Come on forward.
what's the number of the budget, please? The seniors?
It's 6110, so it looks like it's second from the bottom toward the back of the binder, second from the bottom, or maybe right around there.
It's on page 10 of the docket.
Yeah, I see it.
This is the request.
Thank you.
That's a Public Works I quoted, so it'll be the next one. That's the tab, anyway, what I called out.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Um, I just want to make sure that we have introductions. I just want to make sure it's Janet, right?
Yeah, I'm Janet.
Janet,
Yeah.
and your last name is
Holmes, like
Holmes.
Sherlock.
And wasn't there a prior that was Janet Gomes?
Janice.
Janice Gomes. All right,
Janice and Holmes.
I was over there
It's
about a
too
month and a half
confusing.
ago, and I got very confused. I thought I was having a
We
moment.
confuse a lot of people.
I thought I was having a moment, so, okay.
No.
Well, okay, great. Do you know everyone here? I think you probably,
Well, some of you came to visit, so.
Okay,
a
great.
couple of-
I'm Jennifer Rashley.
Yes,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
recognize-
Mhm.
Deb.
Deb.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Karen.
Ruth Hollenbach?
Tom Haley?
Jay Evans.
Jay
Joe Souza.
and Joe. Yeah. Nice to-
Great.
Nice to officially meet you in an official setting here.
Well, yeah, some of us,
Intimidating.
it's been 2 years ago for some of us.
So, I will let you, the way we've been doing, well, we get different ways we do this.
Okay.
Jan has his own technique, and then you notice Nancy had her technique, where she kind of went through the budget. So I will leave it up to you. It's probably, if you'd like to go through it line by line, or just kind of
Oh, there's
however
very
you.
few changes to
Okay.
the budget. Most of it's the same. I mean, if you want to just focus on the changes.
Sure, why don't you do that, and then,
I mean, it was just, let's see. Of course, there's like we're requesting a 2% change in my income. I also had requested for my assistant, but she's under union, and that, I guess, falls in a different place. So they amended that, or I guess that's a different negotiation. And then the other one, under the supplies, activities, and instruction, I requested 12.5 for that. Just, I find that I always have to borrow for that particular account from a different account. We did request a lot less for our electrical. We had issues last year, and fortunately, that was paid back, so we didn't need as much for the electrical, so we're saving there, so. But those are really the only changes that I had requested. Pretty much everything was the same. I'm going to double check as I'm looking through this. The only one that was the increase in the supplies, activities, instruction. That's because we have a lot of instructors that come through, and that's where we get our class donations, and we pay that back to the town. It's almost asking basically for the same amount that we give to the town, just because it's kind of a revolving, the classes, we charge $3 for each of the exercise classes and activities, and that money we pay back to the town. But I had to borrow it from different accounts last year to finish paying for instructors. So that's why I asked for the increase on that. But other than that, that's kind of where we were. Everything else was sufficient, I thought. All the other accounts, we had enough to pay the bills, maintenance projects, and like all the septic, we have to have it, the cesspool has to be cleaned out 3 to 4 times a year, and that's kind of a big expense under the maintenance budget, along with exterminators, the alarm, general stuff like that. Oh, we did replace 2 doors last year, one exterior door, one interior door. What else we do? We're always doing something to, well, you guys got the walkthrough, so you could see some of the changes we did over the last, 2 years. So, do you have questions for me?
What we can do, we'll start, we're on this side this time, and we just kind of go around quick, go this way.
Janet, again, to understand, basically with the supply and activities instruction number, the senior center collects fees and then you reimburse the town.
Right, for the classes, but I still, from this budget, is I pay the instructors for those classes. So in my instructors, there's a number of them, and they all have different monthly, hourly fees that I have some that are, $15 an hour, some that are $40 an hour, depending on,
So is the senior center collecting some revenue, is that?
right.
So
Yeah,
that's-
that's the class money that we,
Okay.
for each class that they take, they pay $3. So we collect all that, and then I write a check every 6 months to the town. So we just, so that's about anywhere between, it's about $11,000 a
So it
year
ends up being,
comes back, yeah. So that's kind of the money that I'm looking at this pool.
okay,
It's a-
so it's a very economical way to bring all kinds of services to our seniors.
Exactly, and I try to expand the services, so that's why I need more,
Yeah,
some more
right.
money to pay for the instructors.
Right, you have to bring them in before you can pay them. So
Exactly,
bringing in-
exactly.
okay.
Yep.
Um,
And also on that same account is my account that I use to pay for my printing for my newsletter, which I've increased the amount we get for that, because we're getting about 200, now we're up to 300 a month that we hand out. I was getting 250, but then I ended up printing another 50 on my own, so that increases how much I pay for my newsletters, but it's bringing more people in too, so,
Well, that's fantastic.
yeah.
It's a huge percentage.
Yep.
So many more people are interested. Okay, thank you.
Great, so a question in terms of, there's some capital items. And will we get to those kind of separate as we look at, I guess I'm looking at Jan, but, so we don't need to address those now unless now's the time to.
Maybe after you've done these questions, you can, I think there's one capital item if I'm not mistaken, but.
Oh, there's a facility and a bus, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we're supposed to address them in line with the nightly items. So, why don't we just address it now? You have a question on it.
Yeah, but I guess maybe before we hit that, I would just ask us, like, thank you. 2 weeks ago, we came, it seemed like great things happening programmatically at the senior center, and the progress made from the year before in terms of just cleaning up things and making it better, more functional space. Congratulations. When you look at other communities, are there programmatic things that Tiverton is missing? I mean, it seems like here's a great service, well-used, citizens are willing to pay for many of these types of things. are there sort of broader categories of things that other communities are doing for their seniors that, that Tiverton should be doing, you would hope that we would be doing? So I appreciate you coming with a level budget, greatly appreciated, and sort of asking what more would you like to do?
I see a number of senior centers. I'm on a directors association, so we meet quite frequently. And one thing I know that we're lacking is transportation. Our bus is only providing transportation for 2 days a week. I am increasing it to 3 days a week starting in February, and I'm hoping to get up to 4 days a week by April. I ended up having a small grant that from Senator Felag for $2,000, which will help me pay for the bus driver for another day. But that's one place that we really lack. Most towns have a 5-day transportation, and many even take people on appointments, which we are limited as to taking them to doctor's appointments and things like that. We try to just get them to the center or to shopping, because we have a number of people that rely on, for shopping purposes when they're homebound. So, I just see that is a place, and we also, our bus is a second-hand bus, and I question its longevity. I really do. I do know someday it would be nice to have a reliable bus for us, but down the road, right now it's working. So, knock on wood, because we just got it about a year ago, I guess it was. It's a retired RIPTA bus, so. But it has its issues. So, but, fortunately, we have the public works mechanics that really see to it as much as they can. We had problems with the lift rose this week, so we have one person who relies on it for the lift.
Sure.
And we went to go pick her up, and it wasn't working because of the cold weather. So they got it working again, but it's... I ended up picking her up in the car and brought her in that way, we'll make our way, but,
So that would be one area, and to do that, there might be, is hitting the capital, is to say, we need a better vehicle, but then the other piece would be wages to pay the driver,
The
correct? And
driver,
insurance or things that would go.
yeah.
So I echo what Brendan said, because in 1 year, the change was so different in the building and the programs you've added. And we know from the studies that seniors who socialize more live longer and live healthier lives. So I thank you.
Thank you.
The grant, that's to pay for the bus driver's salary, correct?
Yes,
So,
yes, to increase her hours, yeah.
all right. So, and I know I was going to ask about the capital also, because I know that you have some things to do. But I did have a question. My senior center,
Oh,
that
that
line?
is our, when you walk in the door, the scannage system with the little, it's like a UPC that they scan, and it shows all our members, and they click it, they scan when they walk in the door, and then they select all the activities that they're doing. So it keeps track of the members that are in the building. It also keeps track of the activities that they're taking part in. It's a way to, our activity level. It measures it within the senior center. Shows what people are doing and participation, really. But
I
it's
didn't
good.
even realize we had that.
Yeah, oh yeah, we do. It's a nice system, and we give them a little scan card, and if they lose it, we scan it, and we can see their name, like who it belongs to.
So our senior center is going paperless.
We're trying, we're trying more and more.
Great. Thank you.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, I missed your tour. I'm wondering if I could just swing by for a very short one.
I would love it. I actually invite you to come while we're working, while we're active, because then you can meet some of the members and see us while, Saturdays are fun, but you didn't see all the folks,
Right, okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank
You're doing a great job.
you.
The only significant thing I saw, and I trying to wrap around why it is the electric went down 36%. Now, is that because you changed your lights to LEDs, or is it because of that restructuring?
What happened was
Of
it
the
had,
debt.
well, no, it had increased, well, when they did the lights for the town, there was a certain amount that had to be paid back, that was, what do they call it, when you have a big loan, basically?
Yeah, right.
Financing, thank you. So the financing was put on each of the individual departments.
Right.
So that's why the increase was so high. So it was, ultimately, it was supposed to bring the costs down by having all this LED light, but when you put the finance charges on it, it increased it, like, it doubled my bills. And so that's why we had asked, but then they found money in the rebate or something to pay it back. So that's why we're back to a more reasonable price, and, does that make sense?
You know, it does. So what you're really saying is that the rebate was the tail, we were waiting to see it wag, if you will.
Kind of, yeah, but
So
it
you
was a
had to
shocker
wait for
when it
National
happened.
Grid to give you
Yeah.
the rebate. All
Well, we
right.
didn't expect it, and all of a sudden we started getting these bills and we had to research them, and then we figured it out what it was. And then Denise and those here in town figured out how to pay it back with a rebate, so that, but we had originally budgeted for more because we could see it was, I don't know, it was like a 5-year loan or something crazy. So, but fortunately that was fixed, so.
Yeah, I know last year, those of us who were here last year, we were all like,
Yeah.
what the hell happened?
Well, when I got the bill, I was me too.
You know, it just didn't make sense.
No.
All right, and then, it's not exactly net zero, but the supplies and activities sort of becomes net zero.
Yeah, well, it's a little close. It's pretty close, yeah.
Could be, probably isn't.
Well, it's like you try to increase your activities, right, and get more interest, but then it has to catch up, so you don't always have the money in the account. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better to have a budget and have it there, and so when you need it,
You have it, and then you can,
a guy says, hey, I can do this for you, you can say, good, come on board.
right.
That's it.
Your current salary is the 56,100,
Yes,
so they haven't approved your contracts when,
next year,
next year?
one more year, and then you get to
All right, so you're,
disapprove me, approve.
all right, so you're still at 56,100. The only thing I was gonna say is, there's no reason to not start looking for a new bus now. We've already had, we can document that we've had problems with it, so before we do lose this one, maybe we can keep putting requests in up at RIPTA, or,
I don't know if they'll let me again, because this is the second one that we've gotten.
they do it, they change their buses out at, regular intervals, so they always have buses available.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I just, I don't know how, it was, I can always ask. I can
Yeah,
always
well, the
ask.
only other thing I'll say is, I noticed that.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily mean a brand-new bus, he means
No,
another
I'm
bus.
talking about, like, that's how we got that one. We applied, we got in line, so
No,
now
no,
that you're starting to have problems,
no,
because other
I just
communities
got
also
another one
requested.
though, Joe.
This is what I'm saying,
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
You've
this is
already
the
had a
second.
problem with
Yeah.
liftgate.
Yeah.
All right, and there's problems with the bus already. So that's a reason why you can apply
Right,
now,
right.
before it totally breaks out. So that's what I'm saying, is don't wait like we did last time until it totally fails. The injectors went out on the old bus, we had nothing. Because you got a better chance of getting a bus from them, I think, than you do from the town right now, so.
Okay.
That's my only suggestion. And we can document that there has been issues with the lift, which is a safety issue. So if you got a
Right.
person on the bus and you can't get them out,
Yep,
we can emphasize that. That's it.
okay.
I'm gonna ask for a rebate on my question. I just wanna make sure I have the right numbers. So the 122,439, is that accurate with the total you're requesting, or am I on the wrong?
121,
122,439?
isn't this it?
Am I wrong?
121?
I'm not sure what he's saying.
Well, I'm looking at this total here as the 121,758.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I
Isn't that
got.
what we're requesting right here?
Yes.
Yeah, 121,758 is what we have.
121, what's the date of your document?
January 14th, 2019.
So,
Look
okay,
at the next page, or?
it's less than mine, so I'm not gonna, I'll take your number.
Oh, okay.
And the prior year, I don't know if you have, do you have a prior column? So I have 121,686.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, mine was dated Jan 4. Okay, I was just gonna make a comment about it being 0.6% and how great that is, and it's even lower than that, so even better.
Yes, that's what it is.
Point,
Point 0.06.
oh, was it 0.0? Well, I think it was 0.6 when I did the calculation, it's probably
Now it's
0.06 with the
0.06,
real number,
yeah.
so.
It's less than 1%. It's less,
Oh,
it's
oh, yeah.
less than,
It's less than,
it's less than a,
right, less
it's
than a
less than a
10,
tenth.
right, yeah.
It's only 600ths.
Right. Off of the new number,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. So I was just gonna say thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
They don't have to sharpen their knives. Thank you for that. Awesome. Okay, so I used my rebate.
Quick question, because I got missed with the
Oh,
capital.
I'm sorry.
Because I started and then we started with capital here. When we visited, someone had also mentioned to inquire at Brookdale, Secaucus Bay about their buses. I don't know if that's,
Oh, I haven't had a chance to inquire anything with them, but I'm
I-
not
like-
sure who to speak to there.
yeah.
I'm sure it has
So
to
I
be
don't know, but it was,
administrator or
and
something.
I know my dad had been there and their buses were really nice. So it would be,
Is it a private facility?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
it's on Main Road, just as you get off the exit.
Yep. It's the Secaucus Bay, well, it used to be
Secaucus
called.
Bay Manor?
Brookdale,
Yeah,
Secaucus Bay.
Brookdale.
Brookdale.
I could go way
I think you mentioned.
Coachman, that's what I was saying, where the coachman was,
That's
yeah.
where I had
I've
my
never been to
civic on
Coachman
there.
since I've lived here, so I don't know what that looked like.
You didn't miss much in the later years.
Did you want to ask about the capital for the senior?
Sure, sorry. Yes, let's do that, and I'm looking at a document. Where'd it go? I just had it in my hand. Says draft at the top, so I see 15, 50, and a total of 65. Is that the right document, if I look right?
Right, so five-year capital
Oh,
plan.
right, sure, okay.
So
Page 1,
Yeah.
down the bottom.
it looks like it's dated January 14th, right? Yeah, okay.
Correct.
So let's talk about that. Thank you very much.
So that is essentially, and actually in the tab behind the non-recurring, I believe it is, there is some information that DPW Director Rogers developed with estimates for what needs to be done in the building and how much that approximately would cost.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of that, well, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of backup materials behind that tab, I believe. But it's essentially an email from him dated January 11th. I think you should have that in.
Yeah, I don't have it,
Yeah.
but they did have it when they came, when you guys came for the walkthrough, you had mentioned that you had gotten that.
I want to get on that page. So you're toward the beginning of your binder.
So what's the beginning of the binder? I have it behind, but I may have it slightly different, but it's non-recurring capital,
Thank you.
the first part of which is capital improvements. And the later part is equipment replacement. This is towards or at the end of the capital improvements. On the town buildings, you sort of have to wade, I put little separators in my binder.
Okay.
Have you been able to find it or not?
Yeah, there's an email from,
Rick Rogers.
okay.
Is it in here? And,
It's like, 15 pages in the back of that whole file?
From the back? Thank you.
No, yeah, of that whole package we got.
Right.
All dated 1/11/19.
Says Gmail at the top,
Yeah.
according to Ruth.
Yeah, Gmail.
Yes. Says Gmail on the top. Yeah.
You don't have it?
I got it right here.
Okay, great.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Okay.
And the idea is that we would do a certain amount of work in the first year of this five-year plan, and then we expect that there's quite a bit more work to be done in the next year. And we had actually made the estimates before he did the analysis, and the analysis is actually backing it up that you can do that within those amounts.
Did you have the spreadsheet?
And,
I don't have.
Oh, all right.
I don't know if he's here. Where is Rick?
It's his fault. Not yet.
So the 15,000 for year one, and that number is had by going through this email and parsing out all the items that would apply in year one. Is that how you come up with the 15? Calling those out?
If I'm not mistaken, this is your email, and you also have it in a spreadsheet format, but that's the total amount of work that we're currently seeing that needs to be done.
Yes, but does not include interior, exterior painting.
So-
It just addresses those items, but it needs paint.
So if I could help, the email, all the items in here total $38,300.
On the next page.
And then the spreadsheet or the sheet totals that as well. And the recommendation,
Okay, yeah, this is
therefore,
the
of the 38.3 is the request to do 15,000 in FY '20,
Correct.
correct?
And,
And then
And then-
regroup and see how much more we need to.
and so, so in the next 2 years, it's 15, it would be a total of 65,000, and that would include the painting?
That,
And
the estimate, yes.
Which is
the-
not here.
Right. But
Okay.
the estimate for the painting, there's also interior, work to be done. This addressed the bulk, but there's some interior finish work, et cetera.
Okay. So the difference between the 38,300 in this document and the 65,000 over 2 years in this one, the differential is what it would cost
Right. And-
to
and the
paint and
numbers-
repair.
Right, and the numbers would be refined as you do the
Over time.
repairs.
Okay. Replacing a dirt floor, good idea?
Well, what happened, that was one of the reasons why we had to replace the interior door in the basement, because the floor was sinking underneath, the dirt was settling, and the door actually came off the hinges, because the whole frame, yeah, so that was, and they could see that, they fixed it for now, but they know that it's not going to be a permanent fix.
The floor is already buckling in those small areas, in those
Okay.
two different small areas. And as you seem to indicate, you understand that dirt floors are not the way to go.
Are not ideal. Unless you're camping. Can I ask questions?
Yeah, so, why don't, lost my train of thought there, I'm getting tired. Why don't you start and we'll go around, that's fine.
With this list, what is the reason to only do like a quarter of these fixes this year instead of more? Like, why wouldn't, would it be better to do half today and half tomorrow? Or half this year, half next year?
I'm happy to answer that. All of the work could be done presently, but it's just felt, as far as I'm understanding it, better to allocate money when you have other monies not being spent, so that there's room for it, and put it in that year.
So, Jan, can you, is that because there are other things that, money going to other things in the town, and so this
That's
is a
what
way
we're
to
trying to do
stagger?
with the 5-year plan, is look, across the different departments or areas where we need to do capital expenditures, how can we spread it out and even it out a little bit? And some of that means looking at, how urgent is it to get this particular work done? And some of it, we clearly felt needed to be done sooner rather than later. And other parts could be, postponed for another year. You
And-
see that in several line items in the capital plan.
So then the last little bit is going back to the issue of the bus that we may need. That's not counted.
Not in that. There's
And-
a second part to that budget, which is about equipment replacement, and that has a lot of the vehicles.
Okay,
That's where the bus shows up.
okay.
So that answered, I'm sorry.
I'm also thinking.
Is, if $15,000 were approved as part of the capital plan of the 38.3, do you have a clear sense of what to do right away? Like, is there a prioritization of the list of things?
Actually, he's got it
He's
down,
got-
fiscal
he's got
year.
it right here.
Yeah, he has the years on the chart, which ones
Got it.
are
Mhm.
prioritized.
Oh, okay.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he,
Wow.
very thorough.
Great, and that'd add up to at least the 15K.
Again, you could do, without wasting money, you could spend all of it in the next fiscal year. Just like many people do, they do a little at a
Right.
time based on funds being available.
Understood, and I appreciate that. What we're looking at presented for the first time for the town is looking out over 5 years, and to have some kind of balance over the 5 years about how much we spend. We're making some priorities about what has to get, what we think should get done better. And we've got a lot of round numbers, right? And it's because we're not sure which will go where. And in my opinion, kind of looking at this is saying, it's like Go Fish or Crazy 8, you get what you want. Do you know what you're going to do right away? As opposed to having these what look like round numbers, and it's like it's just a placeholder, right? So to me, knowing that we've identified very specific things, there's estimates on how much the work could be done, and there's a prioritization of it to say, yes, if you gave us 15,000, we would do this. If we did 10, same list, it's just 2 items shorter. Helps me, as opposed to there are some things that will be out there to say, we don't know, and there's a placeholder in the capital budget for 50,000, and the 50,000 gets allocated, and then there's still a ton of work that needs to be done to say, is it really cost that? So that's what I was trying to drive at, is that it's clear for the senior center, if you were, if we approved it, that you would know what to do with it, and then following years, if you got more than you wanted or less than what you wanted, you would know what you would want to do in order. So if that's the case, that's answers my question.
And just following up on that point, because I get the point, and there's a reason why we have not been able to do this for every line item. I mean, this is one where Rick has all the expertise and knowledge to be able to break it down, estimate what needs to be done, how much it will cost. There's some other issues where we actually would need another type of expert to do
Correct.
that initial analysis.
Give us the
And
estimate.
that's where that initial allocation is for.
Great, thank you. Mhm.
It's a great document, Rick. It's great.
I have to give a lot of credit to Janet and Phil for
Yeah, I mean, it just breaks it down so that we can see how it's prioritized and what needs to be done, you know, firsthand, and what we can push off, so.
fortunately, a building like this lends itself to being able to do that.
I think it needs to be on the historical register, right? Thank you.
I just want to follow up, Rick, what did you mean by that? I'm just curious. Like, what is it, this building, is it just because it's the components of the building are accessible? Or what is it about the building that lets you piecemeal it like that?
I have it out.
For instance,
Oh,
when
it's
you're
the
trying
office. I
to
just
do
didn't bring
something
it back.
underground,
I knew you left it here.
or when you're trying to repair a road, or when you're trying to repair, as we discussed before about the seawall, when you're trying to discuss landfill closure, or constructing a building that hasn't been designed yet, that's a lot harder to estimate. And therefore, it has more of a plus or minus to it. There's plus or minus to this too, because in 6 months, prices could rise. But it's not the same degree.
Right. So, so when you look at it, the scope is defined of what you're trying to accomplish. So you're really just, the only variables are really the cost of materials or things like that, which are pretty stable. Yeah.
Anything that's hidden.
Right.
Just like if you
All that, yeah.
shingle your house, and the
Mhm.
contractor would say, we didn't understand that the sheathing, nobody saw the sheathing.
Was rotted, right?
Right.
Yeah, but, okay, I'm done. Thank you for that, though.
So yes, Tiverton, we really do care about our seniors. I think everybody knows that, and this committee knows that. The building is one thing, Rick and Jan and Janet, but I also have concerns. I just want to make sure that you're okay with things like tax return, income tax help, things that I've heard that you do and that you continue to do. I just want to make sure that you are still doing those, and other helps, any help that a senior citizen might need other than just having the building. That's one thing I understand. You have to
The
keep it up.
services.
And I do understand when I see your document, Rick, when you have when one of them fits into FY '20, is listed for FY '20, if you add those up, is that the 15K for this year? No?
The concept of the fiscal year
Mhm.
is just as if a contractor was giving you a plumber and an
Okay, so-
electrician.
yeah.
We're giving you something. If your plumbing is leaking, you need to fix it now. If your
Okay.
plumbing is rusty all over,
So-
you need to keep it in mind that it could pop today and it might last another year or so.
Right, and when I was at the building, it did look like it was in very good shape. I know there's some issues, I understand that, but I don't see a lot of it as being urgent, and I'm waiting to hear what Joe Souza says, because I know he'll have a good handle on, also, in addition to you, I understand what would be, more urgent, and so, I see here with, for example, remove asbestos wall sheathing and basement, you've got 5 different years where you could actually do that.
Yes.
So it could be done in FY '24. So I'm just saying,
And that was so people would be able to see
Mhm.
when and where they could spend the money.
Mhm.
There's no requirement
Mhm.
to remove.
No legal-
undisturbed
okay.
asbestos. However, if you want to make use of that room, you want to get rid of it.
Is that not something that can be covered up with something? They can do that legally sometimes.
Legally, you can, but it's not, in my estimation, a good approach in a senior center.
Why?
If you're gonna use the room, get rid of the asbestos.
But I'm just saying, you can even cover up a floor of asbestos, it's legal and it's viable. So I'm just letting you know that, we just have to be, we do love our senior center, but we do still want to be a bit on the safe and frugal side of this long list of expenses that you've put out here, okay? This is a lot, okay? And so I'm just saying, we need to think about it carefully, that's all I'm really trying to say. Thank you for listing it out so carefully. That's what I meant, well said.
I think you guys did a great job, and you got a handle on everything. I'm pretty pleased. Thanks.
Well, that's it. No, you guys did a very good presentation.
So I'm the only one that's not gonna be satisfied, I guess, because I don't understand these numbers. Are these numbers based on us doing the work in-house?
No.
Because we haven't had actual estimates done on any of this. This is just what you think it's gonna cost.
Yes, for instance, on the shingling, measure it, take a square price for the labor and materials, and say, this is what I
What
think
did you
it's
use
gonna
for a price per square?
I don't have that right off the top of my
It's
head.
very low. We had estimates of I don't know if anybody remember, when we went out to bid on the windows, the estimate came in at $100,000 almost. Every time we've had bids on that building, just the sidewall, the back wall was over $45,000. That's why,
Well, that's windows, that's not windows,
no,
right?
I'm just saying, I think these estimates are way too low if we're talking about going out to bid on anything. We don't have it. See, I'm looking for shovel-ready projects. We've already went out to bid or had a professional estimate done. In other words, a contractor came in and assisted you with information to make the bid with current prices per square foot for shingling, how many windows are there, how much cutting they gotta do. The more windows and the more edging, the more it costs. The roof on the back, the very back of the building isn't mentioned, and it's in pretty bad shape. That's where the new ceramics room is. That roof wasn't changed. The main roof has a 50-year warranty on it. It's been up there about, 8 years, whatever, 8 to 10 years. But that back roof is held on, a lot of the shingles are held on with tar, because I put them on myself, so tar on them, the ones that were ripping off. So that came in, that bid was like 18,000, 19,000 to change that roof in the back. The masonry, I questioned $4,000 for, just repairing what little bit of masonry around the foundation that needed to be repaired. So I have none of these estimates seem realistic to me, I'm sorry. I mean, I know we went around, everybody was appreciating, but I don't see realistic estimates. I just see that you guys kinda did your own thing and figured somewhere in the middle. But parking lot, the only thing I see listing about the parking lot is the striping. I feel that should be on the paving this year. That should be in, I know it's a different budget, but that should be in the paving. The bus we talked about, the asbestos in the, that's a boiler room. I mean, you can't put anything in that boiler room. You're not supposed to use it for storage. It's a boiler room. Nothing flammable supposed to even be in that room. The reason they made it asbestos is because it's a boiler room. If the boiler burned, it would save the rest of the building. So I have no problem with that, those walls being asbestos. And there shouldn't be anybody in there anyway, except to do maintenance on the boiler and to just check on things, so. I just totally agree, we need to remove any of that asbestos. I think it saves the building if there's a fire. That's why it was put in there. So, I think, we need to get a bid on that back roof. We need to measure out the square footage on the parking lot, and see what that's gonna cost us to pave. That would be the two priorities that I would push for. No, I'm sorry, it was a third, the water line. I think we should push on the water line and the paving, and get a bid this year on the roof, so that can go into next year's budget.
The water line is going to be done pretty soon, and that's
Yeah.
gonna be a partnership with Public Works and North Tiverton water, we've already had that discussion, and that's
Okay.
in the works.
A lot of this other stuff, like fixing the masonry, I mean, Phil can do that in the summer. That's a day or two's work out there with some water.
That's good.
And, we looked at a lot of the trim board, a lot of the trim board is just rotted at the bottom, and there was some, there was a few, but I mean, that's not really a priority right now, but the shingles, there's actually a leak in the south wall up above. And then if you look over to the right, where that, bat house was, the shingles, you can see the nails. So the shingles have completely deteriorated and broke off. So that south wall should be something that we get a bid on and look into. That was out of the 4 walls, that was the worst one. And we did actually go out to bid on that 3 years ago, and the money was put in the budget, but the council never went out to bid, so. I know it went back into the general fund, so it's, it wasn't. That's it.
But if I may, I would like to address some of those comments. Thank you, Joe. I certainly don't expect 11 people on a committee to all be in agreement, and I am not against additional monies being set aside to do the parking lot or to shingle some of the roof. I'm not against more money being spent. The shingling on the walls, for instance, Joe mentioned the south wall, thank you. There's new windows, and I'm assuming for financial reasons, they were shingled in a way that somebody with enough money would not have shingled them. They shingled the portions right around the windows. So above the windows and below the windows, and in some of the triangular shapes where the adjoining southern wing attaches to the building, that was not shingled. So these estimates are based on what you should do. It will not match. A lot of people living in a house would not want the shingles to be set up where they're not weathered the same, because it's going to be perpetually until maybe 15, 20 years. They're going to be a different color. And as Jana mentioned, the water service is on the schedule to be done when the weather breaks, both inside and outside, right at the connection. And it's expected, whenever you say, I'm going to shingle the roof or shingle the wall, that you would get a price from somebody. You wouldn't simply say, go shingle. So definitely on that point, that I'm in agreement with Joe, that's standard operating practice. And the asbestos removal, yes, it is a boiler room. However, again, the reason for the 5 different years, you have usable space there. And Joe is correct, the intent of the asbestos is to contain a fire. However, you don't need that large an area. And with fire code sheetrock, you can accomplish the same thing and have a portion of that room where you could do an activity, and as Joe pointed out, it's really better not to store stuff in the same boiler room, but if you separated it, then you could use it as a storeroom more comfortably. And as Ruth mentioned, you don't have to get rid of the asbestos. Everybody's gonna have different opinions, but I'm a proponent, if something is relatively easy to get rid of, that's considered hazardous in some form, only if it's inhaled. You can touch it all day long, but you're talking about seniors, and you don't want them scraping up against it. Now, not everybody's gonna be in agreement with that, I understand that, but I put forth what I think are logical procedures and estimates.
And just to be clear, the seniors don't go in that room at all.
Yeah, no.
They don't even know it exists.
Now, the only thing I saw here was years ago, they stored big tables and stuff in there, I'm not sure if there's some
Is the asbestos, how much is exposed
It's
to
all,
the air?
it's all closed in.
Yeah.
And it's a closed-in room. It
No, I
has-
mean, on the walls themselves, is the asbestos where
Yes,
you would
it's
just touch it?
Yeah, it's a sheets of
Yeah.
asbestos. you
Right.
know, It lines the walls,
I
I
see.
guess, or the, but it's,
And there's no state law, there's no law that says you have to do it now, soon or within a certain period of time there in that kind of situation?
I don't believe
To my
so.
knowledge, no. And to my knowledge, you also, with somebody who's licensed, encapsulate it, just like you can with lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Would you mind getting the estimate for that too? And so we can compare in future, for future reference?
yes,
Okay.
that could be done
Okay.
in the future.
Yeah.
You would be able to spend all your $15,000 without touching that asbestos room in the fiscal year 20.
Right, and still would like, if there's an option other than what you have here, that I would still like to know what that estimate would be, you know? If you have an option to cover it, like what would the estimate be? Just for information, you know, that's good to make decisions. And
Again, that'd be something you could do in-house. You could go in there with 5 gallons of paint. That's all you gotta do is paint it.
I think that might be true. I've heard the same thing in the past. I'm just not sure about currently.
That's for lead rules.
But
you can,
I'm
but-
not
The thing is, we never had to bother with it. It's been there, what, 60 years, and it's not bothered anybody. Leave it alone. You know?
Well, it can be discussed.
So, we went around this way, got to Joe, we had discussion. Are there any more on these capital items, right? That's what led to this, I believe?
Yes.
So, are there any more capital items that we were discussing? Can someone help me out here a little bit? I don't think so, right?
Was the assumption that the $25,000 was for, would we have to pay RIPTA for the bus, or is this if one did not come from RIPTA?
RIPTA gave us the bus for free, yeah, it was a retired one. And they've done that before, and, you know, we get a few years out of it, at least I hope so.
That works.
I'm hoping we still, you know, it wasn't perfect. It's funny, they don't come with tires, because, did you know that they lease the tires on their buses?
They lease
Makes
the
sense.
tires?
Yes, something I learned by the internet, yes. Do not come with tires.
Okay.
The option to buy at the end, huh?
We had to get the old tires from the old bus to put on the new one. Just thought it was a little fact that you might not have known.
So if I may, because you might want to ask, you know, why do we put that 25,000 in the first year of the 5 years? I put it in there because I have on several occasions now, you know, heard some serious concerns with whether the bus is going to be available or whether it will be breaking down again and things like that. So it's a rather probable event, you know, where the thing is going to break down. And earlier, you talked about how important these services are, and also how important, you know, Janet mentioned transportation actually is, and if anything, you know, could we expand the transportation options? So from that perspective, it's I would think, somewhat important to create an opportunity to, you know, if RIPTA doesn't have a freebie available, to look in other directions and see if we can get a used vehicle.
How much has it cost us in the past to repair the vehicles that we've gotten from RIPTA? Like, although they've been free, how much do they cost?
I do not know that number off the top of my head. I know that our mechanic occasionally does fix them. And again, as I heard from the back of the room, there is an issue with the gate. In fact, I think there was an issue with the previous bus's gate.
Exactly.
Also, the heating system, air conditioning system
Yeah.
does not function correctly.
And then that was the problem with the last one, and the heating system, the air conditioning system malfunctioned, and it was, it just grew from there. And that's why we got this one, which, and I guess that's where their weakness is, apparently. Their heating, air conditioning. So right now, the heat is working part of the bus, the air conditioning doesn't work, but it's not a problem at the moment. It may be, hopefully, when the, when it gets to June again, we'll get back to, so, I mean,
Janet,
Yes.
we really would like the repair costs numbers. If you could just get that to either Nancy Mello or someone on the budget committee to get it to us. That's just going to influence decisions.
well, I guess it depends, well, we do it
If you
in-house,
can.
so it's part.
Okay, so then Rick, then, yeah, that would be great.
I can try to do that. We have, however, after years of not having such, well, we're appreciative that we got approval to get a scan tool with the requisite software to start tracking that.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, I do not know if the records would be somewhat available to track past costs. That's,
I can look back at my records from the bus, the previous bus, because,
Denise would have it too.
yeah, and
Thank
Denise would
you.
have them as well.
That's great,
This,
thank you.
this one, fortunately, we haven't had too many problems yet. I mean, I just know that
right.
we're just dealing with it with the,
And I agree with Janet and Jan, of course, but the cost would not reflect labor, because just as the small amount we do for the school, for the senior center, and a large section of labor for the fire department, that it comes out of our budget. Parts, they come out and are assigned, and then Denise or the different departments pay for those, so those are trackable.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
the labor is a large portion of repair costs, as you all know. So that's an unknown.
And that just brings up that it is good that the different departments in town do work with each other.
Yeah,
I think
okay,
that's an
goodness.
excellent savings, and you'll get credit for it in some way, I'm sure. So, thank
Rick,
you.
Rick, when you said the gate, is that the, like the lift?
wheelchair lift?
The
Yeah.
wheelchair lift?
You're right, Deb, I said the wrong word, but yes, the
The
lift.
lift?
I understood.
Yeah, that's right.
I knew what you were talking about.
I assumed, but, so do you think that was because of the weather, that it was just frozen? Is that what we think?
That's a good question, because last week she went to use it, we have a woman that wants to come, and she's in a wheelchair, so we're like, oh, yes, we're all ready for you. And it worked, and then we got the cold spell, and she went to go use it, and it didn't work, and it was banging, and they got it to work again. But then when she went to pick her up, it didn't work. She was gonna take her in the car.
I mean,
And then she went back, and it finally did work, so I think it was weather-related, at least.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I mean, with seniors in a freezing situation, as my inclination would be not to pick them up at all anyway, in any kind of a bus, just for those few days, that's what I'm just
Well,
saying.
she didn't come today.
Sorry.
Okay, I want to give, Joe wanted the floor. I want to give Joe the floor, and
Well, I was just gonna say, the intention of the senior bus, when we initially started with the bus, was to help seniors that, I guess at a certain age can't drive anymore, so they have a hard time getting out shopping, go to the stores, and we used to run them up to the Harbor Mall, and it was never intended to deliver people to doctor's appointments around the,
Oh, and it's not used that way.
I'm saying it, we're talking about expanding out, but those people that are coming on the bus, obviously, they can't drive because a lot of them because they're handicapped, so it's important to have that. Those systems are hydraulic, electric hydraulic, and, when they get older and colder, relays malfunction, things like that, so hydraulics could have water in it, who knows, it's frozen. But, the town tries real hard to provide the service, and there's been times when the buses have been down, but we've never really been able to afford to buy a new bus. That's why we've always gone to RIPTA. So I'll just say again, we need to really try, get in, I think there's a list. You apply, you get on the list, and when one comes available, and sometimes it's based on need. I think our rep got involved last time because we didn't have a bus at all. That's why we got the one we have.
No, I got another one since then, without the rep, so are you?
Really? This is the third?
Yeah, I got a bus.
Okay.
That's
Well,
good, that's
I
the
know.
one that's the one we're we're talking about, because the
You
other
said, I
one
thought you said
broke
two,
down on
though.
me.
Now you're saying three in a row that, we
Yeah.
thought two, so now you're
Well,
saying three.
You were talking about getting a rep involved. That
No,
was
I'm
the
saying,
last
when,
bus.
I'm saying we went a long time without a senior bus.
Right.
And
went
we ended up having to ask Jay to go up and try to get involved in it. Now, that's not the bus we have currently. I wasn't aware that we had actually another bus come in.
I got another bus from
But-
Riverton. It was just,
Just that, we do
That's
what
what
we
I'm trying
can.
to tell
We
you.
do what we can as a town, that's my point.
We're also not the only town
yeah.
looking for this, so
Yeah.
that's, keep that in mind, that,
Yeah.
most senior services departments in town are competing for the same opportunity.
So I'd like to, we touched on the capital. I'd like to move on. It's 6 after 9. I'd like to move on if we could. Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Is this still yours?
the,
No, no, that's yours. Well, yours. Nice to see you guys.
I could call right,
Please come visit the center.
okay.
Thank you,
I could call right now for like maybe a 3-minute break. Does anyone take a 3-minute break, or are we good? I need to go. I need a 3-minute break, but that doesn't mean we have to stop the meeting, or we could just take one and stretch our legs. Why not? We'll be more efficient. We'll get it back in efficiency. 3-minute break. Thank you. I just think that I'm going to bring us back here to 3 minutes. Looking at the agenda and the time, it'd be delightful if we could really try to move through a lot of these items, of course. And the Public Works budget, a lot of these line items are one-liners, okay? So if we can get through the Public Works, and I think we're on capital, aren't we? And we're going to try to get through it in a more efficient way. Then a lot of these next bunch of them are one-liners, at least down to 15, which again isn't that complicated of a budget. And then we have 16, and so anyway, we got a good shot here of moving some mountains. So with that, I'll be quiet, and I'll turn it over to Jan, and I'll let Jan reorient us on where we were last time. We were on capital items, if I recall that. We kind of slowed us down a little bit because we were in a technique where we were going one at a time, and I'd like to try to do a little better, as we were doing earlier tonight, by grouping things a little more before we go around the table. So we were on capital items, were we not, Jan?
I believe so.
And were we looking at the document, which was this one dated January 14th, 19?
Correct, although some of these particular items, capital improvement items, I don't think are in that budget document,
Okay,
because,
should I be
as
looking
I-
in the big binder then, or where should I be looking? Oh, yeah,
right, you do have behind, or at least I have them in my binder, behind the regular budget document, you have the capital budget document.
We do as well.
We went through this last time.
so that would be non-recurring capital, that one? Yep.
It's under non-recurring
Yep,
capital
got it.
tab, correct?
Okay, thank you. All right, so I have a line on my page here, right above town buildings. Is that where we left off?
Yes.
Is that what that means? Okay, thank you for reorienting me. Okay, so let's start, I guess, right here at town buildings. And again, I want to try to, before we go around the table, I'd like to try to, maybe we'll try to get through this section, and then we'll try to go around collectively, just for efficiency. Because last week, we really were dogging it in that regard. The technique was good, but we were just being too picayune. Okay, so Jan, I'll let you maybe talk through, perhaps, would you like, maybe talk through what you see as, for these items in this bunch, for 1920, and maybe you could talk through that, and.
Yeah, I don't know that we have to go line by line unless you absolutely want me to.
Okay,
I think I want to point out that under DPW main building rehab or replacement, you obviously have a very small amount in the first year. You're not going to do any rehab or replacement with that. So that is meant to at least do an initial analysis of the current building and to what extent it makes sense to try and save that and then upgrade it and what have you. And if the findings are from an initial engineering or whatever it may be analysis that it's worth it, then we're gonna need to, allocate more money to upgrade that building. You really wanna look at that line item sort of in tandem with the next one, which is the Public Safety Facility Study Plan. And there's another one looking at fire and rescue stations upgrade and renovations, where again, it's a rather small initial amount. There's several locations here where money is, that we recommend putting money aside to do these evaluations and engineering analyses, just basically feasibility studies with some engineering analysis and maybe preliminary design. So those are relatively small amounts. They're very difficult to estimate. We would need to have, either, to some extent, Rick can help certainly with his own building. He may have, an idea, but even there, you might want to have a structural engineer helping with the analysis of the building. So we need to bring some experts in to help us actually do the initial analysis and come up with better cost estimates for future years. That's basically the principle behind here. There are the larger questions about what are we gonna do about the police station, about the DPW facility, and about the fire stations. They all have similar questions as to, how are they currently functioning? Different people have different opinions about that. The police station, you will hear from the chief what the shortcomings are there, and to what extent we can expect that to be an adequate facility for how many years. The rescue station, I happen to know that the one that I think you first visited, the headquarters, for example, doesn't have handicapped accessible capacity, things like that. So it does make sense, to the extent we have the resources to pay for it, is to take a good look at what is the condition of these buildings, what is lacking, and what are the different options that we have to either address them one by one, or maybe in some combination. And that's basically the objective with beginning to estimate what kind of money we may need, and in the first instance, focusing primarily on doing the initial analyses.
Thank you. Does anybody, we'll start on which side here, see if there's any questions on any of these items. So we ended with Joe. So Joe, we'll start here. We're going to go look at from town buildings down to the bottom of that page on those items. Do you have any questions on those?
No.
Okay, Jay?
So when we do the Public Safety Facility Study Plan, I think there's a thing called OIS that the insurance companies use to determine how your fire department is structured and if it meets certain criteria. Is it gonna dovetail with that?
Yeah, I'm personally not aware of that, but I'm glad you mentioned it. That does make a lot of sense, is if we're gonna plan for facilities for our public safety agencies, we might as well look at where are we going. I don't know if this is what you mean, but our functionality, our structure, and do we need to reprogram more or less the space that we use? Is that sort
Yeah,
of what
because
you're
there was, well, one of the they give a town grades, how many firefighters do you have, how long does it take to get to a fire, where your fire, all that kind of stuff. And one study that was done, they want us to move fire stations. Probably not gonna happen, but, these things all have to be considered.
It's called OIS?
I think it's OIS.
Okay. I'll have to
Fire
check.
chief's got
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
3 or 4 books of it.
Right. And we're not saying that we know for sure that we're gonna have to move stations or whatever, but I think especially since we do need, between DPW, police, and fire stations, we know we're gonna have to do something over the next 5 years. And so to get a better idea of where are the priorities, what is most urgent, to what extent are you better off trying to do it in combination rather than very piecemeal, I think it's good to do this kind of analysis. And it's also at the request of the department heads, so.
Tom?
Yeah. So the current year, like you said, you're going to have some studies done, some pretty detailed and engineering-based studies done, so that we know what we want, correct, for this year? But what about the following year, like the $250,000 line on DPW? Is that more study, or?
No, that would actually be if
Doing
the
work.
conclusion is that we either do a major upgrade or we're gonna have to build a new DPW building. You're gonna need, for a major upgrade, probably at least that amount in that next year. For a replacement, assuming that you could actually phase it, you might need those two amounts. And again, this is planning out in the future. This is not saying we're convinced that
Right.
you can do it for this money, that it's enough. We don't know. We just want to put it on the radar that
Right.
between these buildings, you're going to probably look at some, significant capital expenditures.
So for the town hall, the out years are only $10,000 every other year. Is that also for anticipated repairs, or?
Yeah, and those are, actually, I think that's probably a very conservative estimate. This is
Yeah, so-
just sort of
Sounds good.
pay-as-you-go minor repairs. There are some questions as to whether, you have adequate accommodations here, but we didn't want to, get into that at this point. I think we need to have a more also internal discussion of, are we using the space the most effective way? But these would deal with some of the items that we know we run into from time to time.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
So, yeah, you're talking about this, like this building and how you're using it, and is it the best way? Is there anyone who could do maybe a little bit of a, not expensive study, but is to just come in and say, give you ideas on the use of the rooms in certain ways, maybe, that type of thing? And I'm thinking where when I work, they come in and they do ergonomic studies, but it's a little different. This would be room use sort of study, building use in an efficient way, where the copiers are, and I don't know, just what room, I don't know, just happen to think of maybe something like that to make this use more efficient here in this building, like the town hall, for example.
I would love to have it done by an independent professional outfit. Right now, we have competing visions or, preferences as to, well, I want my space, I like it, and I'm not gonna give it up, or something like that.
Yeah.
And what we really need is, okay, this is the building, we all love the building, we like to keep using it. What is the best way to use it? And if there are, affordable ways to make it a little bit more efficient use, that you can get more out of it, then that might be the way to do it. And having an independent professional do it is more convincing than if I do it or one of the department heads. So I would
Right.
agree with that.
So people have certain favorite areas that they're
But
in.
it costs money too, not
I know,
necessarily
I
a
know.
whole lot, but.
Yeah, and the other side of the coin is, it seems to be working pretty well right now, too, so that's one thing.
Well, I'll give you one example. I think, and if I had more time, I would have tried to get this accomplished. We should have an internship program where you bring in interns from, for example, Roger Williams University or URI, and you can get graduate students sometimes, and all you do is pay, at most a stipend. We have no room for them. There's no workstation. I've thought about reconfiguring some of the planning and building and zoning offices, and we're not really, that's not an efficient use of the space currently. But it would take money to reconfigure it. Or when you start thinking about it, you really want to look at, how do we overall use the space? Getting back to your point.
Well, wait a minute, thank you. What was the purpose, how does that internship work again? You're saying it, you bringing them in for what
So
purpose?
for
They help
example,
us,
in-
or they
to-
learn things?
To help
at-
with certain
okay.
projects.
And they learn at the same time, okay.
For example, just earlier today, we were talking about, I was talking with some of the boards and commissions about the need to develop additional web pages, so that for businesses, you have sort of the information that, businesses really could use when they are initially interested in coming to town. They want to know, what does the town have to offer? What kind of programs are there? What are the steps that we have to go through, all of that. Visitors, to the extent people are interested in getting more visitation in Tiverton, it would be nice to advertise sort of the things that are attractive, things to do in town. Historic can be sort of on the edge of tourism or visitation as well, but also sort of highlighting the assets that we have in town. That work, we don't really, we have people who could do it, but except for they don't have the time. Because they have other jobs here. But you could get students who can do a fantastic job on it, and sometimes
How
you
would the
get faculty
payment,
support with it.
how would the finances work with an intern coming in? Like, how do they, do they, anybody get paid or pay in that relationship?
Well, there are programs where, first of all, they get academic credit for doing an internship. So that means that they don't get paid as much because they get credit instead. Depending usually on the level of education, you may have to come up with a stipend, which can be like, $1,500, $2,000 for a semester or something like that, which is peanuts compared to what you otherwise would do. And if you have some quality control over this and you work with the right faculty at these institutions, you can get good people. The possible downside is that you have to spend a lot of time on supervision and training and what have you. But it's sort of an art to try and find the sweet spot there and work with the right faculty. But again, that's, to set up the program, to pursue that, that takes time. I keep hoping that I'll find the time to do that, because I do have a network that I can access. But having that resource would be great. But then we would need to have a place to put them, and have a computer terminal to the extent we can, like a shared room where people can just access the same computer at different times of the week. That's what I'm thinking about. That's just one example of, we don't have the room for that right now.
Okay.
Just making sure that was all my questions. Right, on the DPW building, my understanding was it was just the back wall that was the main problem, so I just want to make sure that you're careful in, like, saying, I need a brand-new building, whole building. I think that, if you can do it with a lot of what's there. I saw a lot that's perfectly functional, so I just want to be sure that we get the facts, of which wall is, what the condition is, which wall in, and some details on that for future reference. Thank you very much.
That's the purpose of that initial study, that you have someone assessing, is the rust as bad as it looks, or is it just superficial and you still have a frame that you can rely on?
Right, but I mean, I really think that Rick seems like he's really capable of making those assessments. I mean, just from what he's done on other things. I just want to make sure that we're not spending on studies that we don't need. That's my only concern. So, yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the point, and thank you for the nice compliment. But there's different levels of investigation and different levels of estimating. And the size of the building, and the fact that there's concrete floor and it's not in terrific shape, the fact that it's really not energy efficient, the fact that the layout is not terrific. We make do, but it involves something more than the amount of time that I could give something like that.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple quick questions for Jan. So the first, in the town building section, first item, town hall repairs renovations, that is not a plan. And the last item, senior center renovation, is not a plan.
Correct.
And the other one, police station upgrade, has 0 in it, so it's not funded. So the other 3 are the plans?
Yeah, that's actually because there's overlap with that public safety facility
Okay,
study.
so the other 3 are the other ones are the plans, right? All the ones
Yeah.
in the middle are the plans, Okay, I just want, so it's like 100,000.
Pretty much,
100,000 exactly.
although it would give us, if, for example, we had an issue at the fire station where we have a serious issue with, say, an access or the entrance or whatever, there would be money in the account to deal with something that happens. And to some extent, I know that the acting chief is somewhat concerned with, some of the conditions. So there would be some flexibility to use that if that becomes more of a priority than, getting the planning done. But the main primary goal for allocating these amounts is to get those engineering studies and analyses done.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Any questions?
No, I think it's very well planned out and very well explained. Thank you.
Brandon?
No, all set.
All set, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Jim,
Mhm.
before we move on.
Sure.
just Probably Chief Lamb, so I don't know how many years ago that was, actually did a study on the complex. We're talking about there would be combination, police, fire, we had talked about this. We studied it, we looked at it, we looked to see how much federal, state money we can get. A lot of that work was done already. And it just came down to the town wasn't gonna float the bond to do it anyway. We decided to keep the buildings we have, take care of them, which we really haven't done that great of a job taking care of them, but, I just wanna say, I'm usually in favor of, studying things before we spend money. In this case, I'm really not even in favor of spending money to study something that financially the town's not gonna, we're not gonna take another bond out for $60 million to build this big facility at public, by the Public Works Garage that can bring the North End Fire Department and the police and everybody under one. It's not gonna happen. I mean, we gotta absorb the school budget this year, the school bond this year. So,
It might, we have a casino.
Can I ask how long ago was that?
Yeah,
when was Chief Lamb? That was 2000, right? 2005 in that
years
area?
ago almost, so.
A long time ago. He's on his like his third department since he left
I'm
us.
just saying though, that we did, we spent the time, we even had like Roger Williams students do architectural drawings and stuff like that, of what the facility would look like. And it was great, but when it came down to it, we looked at the price, so I don't know. I mean, I wanna be frugal in this budget, and this seems like something that, should be, we have a lot of great volunteers in this town, and that's how we did it last time. A lot of these studies, we should be looking to the boards and the volunteers to help out
Okay.
first, before we try to pay somebody to do it. Let's see if we can get some of our great volunteers in this town to do this work.
Yeah, that sounds
That's my only point.
If I may address that, at this stage, 20 years ago, the study was valuable back then, Joe.
Yeah.
But regulations, requirements have far outpaced everything else. So you need somebody to study this that knows the requirements. There's requirements for how much space you have to have for detainees in police stations. That's not a stagnant thing. 20 years ago, that rule may not even have been there. You can't go by a study that long ago.
Well,
Is
my
that a-
point wasn't that we can't go by the study. My point was the town is not gonna float a big bond to build it. So it's great to propose it, but I don't see this town needing it or even wanting to pay for it. Currently, everything we have works, and we've been trying our best over the last decade to put money into these buildings to keep them. Like, for instance, Public Works, I walked around that building. It's a metal building, it looks like every other industrial building in the area. Is there some rust at the bottom? Yeah, but I've been on jobs where we fixed the rust using rubber roofing. And then we painted the back of the buildings with that rubber paint that you see the guy floats the boat out, if he cuts the bottom out or whatever. It's urethane paint and it protects the metal. So, that's all those little rust holes and things in the building. That doesn't mean you tear the whole building down. It means the maintenance guy goes over there, spends a couple of days, grinds it down, you can patch it with Bondo and spray it with undercoat. It's metal. There's 100 ways to fix that. But we don't do it. We let it keep rotting and rotting and rotting. So if he said he wanted to hire another maintenance guy to start doing this work, I'd be all for that. But doing a study? No, let's hire somebody to fix the stuff.
All right,
That's my point.
thank you. I just, my comment was just that I added it up, there was 100,000 in studies, that's why I wanted to add that up. Thanks, Joe. I'd like to move on. This could easily digress for 30 minutes. I'd really like to try to keep moving on. If that's okay, I'd like to do that. So, have we gone through the actual Public Works budget? I don't think we have. I think this capital stuff is just, okay, so why don't we do that? Jan, could you get us to the Public Works budget, please? Thank you. In here, it'll be in here somewhere.
The more traditional budget document, on
Page 9.
page 9.
Thank you.
And it goes, the related items are on the next page as well. So. And I think here, I don't know, but I would hope we'd have time to look at some, not only the budget spreadsheet itself, but some of the backup documentation. This could have easily, and it was actually at one point, more than 50 pages of backup, which is a little difficult to handle. So I asked Rick to simplify it a little bit, and for example, where we have items that either are low funding or just a sort of general assumption about increasing costs from year to year, to bundle those. So the backup is not necessarily one sheet for every line item, but on one sheet you have a whole bunch of line items that have something in common, essentially.
And as Jan mentioned, this went through quite a few reiterations to try to make it so it was concise and clear.
We hope. This is, I believe, organized by sort of the, what I call them, little chapters on the public works. Salaries is one, then operating expenses.
Excuse me. Who did we start with last time? I think we're over here with Jennifer this time, if there's any questions on the items, which would start with line item, sorry, I'm trying to get there here.
Let me point one thing out about
Okay, sure.
salaries that you already, I think, know, but once again, we are not including an increase in the union personnel
Right.
here. That contract is going to be negotiated this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the salaries. I note the overtime's level, just looking straight across, yep. And most of these numbers are pretty darn close to level, it looks like, right?
On overtime, one other thing that Rick had done was shift some of the overtime cost to the category for landfill operations, because over the past many years, we have put all overtime under the regular operations, but, in fact, some of that overtime really belongs on the landfill, so you'll see you see an overtime item there.
I'm gonna start with Jennifer, and why don't we do salaries and operating expenses? And it's my document, page 9. I'm looking at the January 4 right now, because,
Can you come back to me?
okay. Brendan?
Yeah, I know it was mentioned in the backup, but just kind of eyeballing under operating expenses, there were a couple of areas that had significant increases. So the tree removal.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd preface, sort of the question is, we've got a lot of dead trees. Is there a priority list? Do we know? Is this something we contract out as basically it's a round number? Is it a real number? Do we know what we would do, how we would do? So a $10,000 increase. Similarly, looking at the repairs and tires, a big increase in there. And then, so I'll hit those, and I have one more in terms of thinking about the IT and computer software.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. On the trees, in fact, National Grid held a seminar for people. The South County has been hit hard. Tiverton, Little Compton along the Westport border has also. So we're not alone in thinking there's a lot more trees than there used to be that need to be trimmed. We're going at the rate that we have now. We're gonna run through the budget, which is currently $5,000. And we figure, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, I just did the backup quite a while ago, but we had something like a 20-day backlog of trees this year, and it's 75, so it's about $600 a day. So yes, we are not equipped to do the trimming of the trees that are anywhere near the power lines, and that includes Cat V and telephone. So we have to sub that out. We assist them, that's how come we get such a good price of only $600 a day. But that's this year, and we certainly expect there to be more in the future years. Between the gypsy moths, the emerald ash borer, the periodic droughts, and then too much rain. For instance, National Grid mentioned that ash trees that have not been treated in New England will be non-existent in 10 years. That's what DEM figures. There's something, and I forget if it was 235 or 325,000 acres that have been hit by deforestation. Then National Grid warns, they've been whacked on a couple of their vehicles, and they do this for a living, that trees will start falling. This is not a sky is falling talk. This is just what National Grid has said, and they didn't present it as a sky is falling talk. But they said reality is, even in the summer months, tree branches, tree limbs are gonna start to fall because there's a major infestation problem that's been going on. And ash particularly, because it doesn't have, it's much more brittle than like oak that was hit a few years ago. It's not a fascinating topic, but the need for it is great, and the 5,000 is nowhere near enough. And the other item,
So Rick, can I just add on
Sure.
that? So, and this is, in essence, reactive. So the request for $15,000 to say, we know it's coming, a tree's coming down, we go out, as opposed to thinking proactive, this is not.
yeah, yes, exactly, a little
There
bit
is
of
some
both.
of both.
We have to do some trees, but trees that are dead, but not quite in danger of falling, we would like to get ahead and trim those. But in trees that we handle, we do a lot of trimming ourselves. It's not reflected in this budget. This is just the budget near power lines, telephone poles, et cetera.
Okay. And then the other question was on
The
repairs.
repairs, yes. That is actually a little conservative. We have been playing catch-up on repairs for quite a while. We're presently, in fact, we brought this to the town council's attention the last meeting, but we don't have any funds with which actually to transfer any monies. But we're outpacing our repairs. And as I mentioned, that's because we're doing catch-up. And the projections, again, due to the age of the equipment, and the fact that snow plowing, for instance, is a rugged business, that is going to continue, not at the same clip, but at a much larger clip than was budgeted for this year. That's why there's an increase. And that's simply based on historical data. And I watch the mechanics. They are not buying parts that are not necessary. These are replacement parts, spare parts. So this is not it's not a guess. It's based on what we have been spending.
And then the last question that I had was, and it's perhaps part of the broader is, so I understand it, what's been presented for a lot of the departments in terms of software/IT, is that when they have a specific piece of software that they need, whether it's the assessor's office, the collector's office, or something, they have to pay for it. But there's a broader plan and a request, a capital plan to upgrade equipment, move to the Microsoft 365. So a question would be, is there's a request here in the operating expenses for $5,000 for IT computer, and what's that? Is that something proprietary that DPW needs to run itself, or?
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. And Jan also has some IT in the overall budget. But to run the scanner, to get the updates, to run the software that allows you to diagnose all the data that's coming in, and you can't buy that. You have to rent it or lease it. That's a monthly payment. You can pay it the whole year up front, and we try to do that to save some money. But that's an ongoing bill, and that's what that reflects.
Okay, so this is specific to DPW software, hardware for, what kind of scanning is it, Rick?
For equipment and trucks, yes.
Got it, okay. Great.
Police, fire,
Systems inside the
yes,
Onboard diagnostics.
yes. These days, if you don't have that,
right, you can't repair anything.
flying blind, and, Right. and that's why a lot of things didn't get fixed. Now
Oh, I
we
see.
actually have the
Oh,
equipment
okay.
that figures out what is actually wrong and how can it be fixed.
Interesting.
And I do want to say that it's sort of in tandem with the capital strategy as well, that over time, we hope to bring up, the condition of the vehicles that we have, so that, we do away with the ancient stuff that, the duct tape doesn't really work anymore.
But those were my questions on the.
Thank you, Brian.
So that has nothing to do with that computer that you talked about for police and fire? This is totally separate? This is just soft?
Yes.
Okay. And I see that the longevity has gone down, that's the retirement of longer term?
Right, thank you, Deb. But that's simply a reflection of different people retiring and the, who's still, who it applies to, and whether it's in landfill or what we consider the road crew, even though they're the same people.
It's all in here. Okay. So I see, is this a new line item, the line painting? Because I see this is the
The-
first year.
The line painting, yes. I think it was, my understanding is it was in, sometimes in the past, but I put it back in because, for instance, even right out here at Town Hall, it would be nice to have parking spaces lined out. There's occasion, on town roads, state roads, of course, too, but we don't have to do that. On town roads, it would be nice to have some stop bars in some locations and some other striping, handicap striping in certain areas.
Okay, so basically we were paying for that out of somewhere else.
Yeah, we did very little of it.
Oh, we just didn't do
Which
it.
is- Yes.
We just didn't, okay. And my other question was about the software, so all set, thank you.
Couple questions. So the salary lines, this is specific to what the salaries are used for. Like, have the personnel from DPW, like, have they been helping out down at the beach project down here at all? What's that, Stone Bridge?
Yes, Grinnell's and
Yeah.
Stonebridge, yes.
They have, okay.
And-
So-
And part of that, Jeff, is, but the in-kind grant allocations, when you,
Matching grant can be done in kind.
Okay, but it's not in kind in that we're paying them, right? I mean, it's in kind for the
So this
paperwork
is-
of the state or
You
whoever
apply
gave
for
us
a
the
grant,
grant.
and as part of the arrangement, you match what you get from the granting
Right.
agency. Our match can either be cash or time expended by our personnel. So our personnel cost becomes leverage, this was leverage for the grant that we're getting, which is why it's important to keep track of how many hours and who's working on what.
Okay,
But it enables us basically to get those grants.
okay, so I'm just curious in the macro sense. So how much is the, like, how much, I guess, in our in-kind, I've never seen the grant, how much in-kind from this department, like, do we have to give them, like, in a year, or how, in this life of the project, or, like, is it $100,000 of in-kind, or, I'm just trying to understand, like,
I would have to go back. I mean, we're at the tail end.
Yeah.
You know, basically, both projects are pretty much done. And so when the grants were applied for, or the monies were applied for, those analyses were done. How can we come up with the match? How much of that will be, you know, from which department contributing labor or whatever it may be? I don't have that as part of this.
well, I understand, I'm
This budget.
yeah, it's just kind of trying to
And
understand.
I do know that, I think Bill Anderson, you know, was a little worried about how much demand there would be on the DPW personnel, you know, to get these projects done. And that, you know, he had many other things that the same people had to do. So
Right.
there was that concern. It ultimately, I think, has worked out just fine. But it was adjusted, if I'm not mistaken, that, you know, so that it was within reason and DPW could still do its other work.
Yeah, well, I guess that's, you know, yeah, I'm just kind of getting at that a little bit in the macro sense. It's just, you know, I mean, if DPW had 40% surge capacity to be down there over the year, then that's just odd to me, and I just don't know the numbers though, so. Well, I think it would probably be in the thing. I'll email you on if I have the ambition to. And my other question was, where is it down here? There was a new fee. Oh, that was no, where is it? No, but it was a $12,000 item. Was it new? Yeah, what is the engineering services for? Maybe it was already spoken about, but I didn't hear it if it was. New, 12,000, is that? Engineering, professional engineering services. That's not the claim for closure, obviously, so what would that be? Bottom of page 9, at least in the docket budget I'm in. It's right below, like, stormwater. Guardrail. Oh, maybe it's gone. I'm looking at one dated January 4th. So maybe it's gone. And it seems like the one Ruth has dated the 14th, and the final budget's not there. So I'm probably looking at an older budget, because,
It may, I don't know what it was, I know there is another 12,000 for professional services that I proposed at the planning board, and what we were talking about is consulting engineering.
okay, so maybe it lives over there or something that came out of this one, because it's not in the more recent one. Okay. Those are my questions. I keep this moving. Go ahead. We're going this way. So, Ruth?
I think I'm all set.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I just, I want to hear the paving drainage account story again. I think you might have.
The paving drainage?
Yeah,
Yeah, we came up with, not myself, this was done previously, Tom, that they said, here is the roads that should be done in the next, I believe it was 5 years. And so we did our analysis based on that. It won't go down, it would go up. And we are in the process of trying to check the roads again
and remeasure and see if the prices have changed drastically. But there's more to be done than what's allocated here, simply because there's only so much money.
And the reason that it became a blank is that it was shifted to the capital budget.
Okay.
And the backup is in that part of the backup.
Thank you.
Jay?
All right, so your IT computer software hardware, the new item, is to get you guys a scanner.
No, we have the scanner, it's the fee,
Oh, the software,
well, the updates,
okay.
and the software to run it, and the software be able to diagnose and read them and tell you what it is you're supposed to be
All
doing.
right.
You also have some other software in the office that you need for management and timekeeping and.
Yes,
Well,
there
it's
is
all on the path to predictive maintenance.
Pardon me, Jay?
It's all on the path to predictive maintenance.
Most of it, but
All
there's
right.
some management software as
Well,
well
I
you
understand
need
that,
for-
but I'm a big fan of what we used to call predictive maintenance. And that's where you do scans, you do oil analysis,
Mm.
and you have engine meters that record time. So do we have those?
Don't give
Usually
any
on
ideas
diesels.
now.
Well, I certainly wouldn't mind having more of that. What we've done right now is more the entry level, and that is to be able to diagnose, be able to then read what it is you're supposed to be doing, and track costs. That was something that we thought was a very important item. So there is a cost associated with that software, which would be more than just the basic. Well, it's very important to be able to track the costs.
Can you track trends?
By looking at the piece of equipment, if you look at it and it can tell you when it was done, and you can see by looking at last year's, okay, it cost, so you can track trends in that way.
Just cost though.
Yes, just cost. What else would you be interested in?
Well, for instance, Joe's brought it up before, that's what oil analysis does. You change the oil in a new car, the manufacturer says in 6,000 miles you're supposed to do it again. So you analyze the oil, you do it again, it gives you a readout.
Yes.
And you just keep on doing that. And after a while, you begin to notice, well, you know, the engine's fine, everything's good, you know. Analysis tells me that the predictions are on track, nothing's breaking. But then you get spikes. So that gives you a clue, gee, something bad's happening.
No, and that would be nice, Jay, but we don't have that software, but we.
Well, it's not
we would-
software, you'd have to send it out to get it done.
Yes, no, we do not do that. But we don't have the money in the budget to do that either. We're going through our budget too quickly as it is. It would be nice to be
I
able
was
to do
gonna
it.
say, would you like to do it?
It would be nice.
Would it be useful to you?
I would ask the mechanic, but it sounds like it would be useful.
It might be cheap, you know, a cheap way to go about finding problems before they occur. Just put it in the back of your head,
Very good, thank you.
and Joe will probably beat you up on some more.
Wow.
Joe, the floor is
No,
yours.
I mean, I think we made that point the other day, that I thought it was more to prove that trucks' engines were failing.
Yeah.
You know, like we were told with some of the ambulances, that the ambulance wasn't gonna make it up the road another mile, but it's still around and running, but, I just, Sanford Tree, now they do still a tree warden?
No, John Manchester's the tree warden.
I'm sorry, Manchester, yeah, not Sanford, yeah. Okay, it's still so, and he requested this increase, or was this just?
I talked with John about it, but it's something that we simply analyze what we have to do and what we have been doing.
I'll say, I mean, years back, people got real mad when we cut trees, so just be aware that you go out and start cutting trees, your phone's gonna ring off the hook. Particularly when we use that, the bush hog device to cut the sides of the roads, cause it leaves it all kinda shredded. So just be aware the phone's gonna ring the first time you go out.
I think that's a good point, and I know it from experience. I think it is important to be able to explain to people that We don't like to cut down trees. We like to keep trees as much as possible. There are all kinds of good reasons for that. But there are public safety situations where you basically don't have a choice. And we're looking not at like, doing something in the forest. We're doing something along public roads and what have you. So it's a public safety issue, but we need to be able to make that case.
The only other thing I had to request is I'd like to see the actual village for the OBD, for the computer.
The village?
The OBD testing that you're on board computer testing devices that you install. I'd like to see some actual invoices on that. We've already paid for these? Or is this something that you want in an existing budget, or is this something new that we want to add?
No, the scanner is something that we purchased this fiscal year,
Yeah.
but all the software nowadays, there are some that you can buy outright. But this kind of software and most software, you now get on a yearly basis.
I understand. We used to buy the manual, now you're buying, but this is something where you can plug in and then go back to the phone and go back to their computer? Or is this just some software that we put into our computer? I'm not understanding.
Right, it's software in the scanner itself,
Yeah.
and it's software on the computer. And it comes with a laptop, not a laptop, but basically a large
So it's the same as
iPad.
the OBD I have for my car, but I only paid my car, the ones I got for my car and truck, I mean, it was $180.
Right,
And then I have options where I can go like to all data. And for $45 a month, I can tie in all data, but it doesn't come anywhere near 5,000.
Right.
right. And all that is something that we looked at. However, Mitchell is the only one that would actually do trucks the size of the fire engines and dozers and front-end loaders and backhoes. So all data wouldn't do
I'd just
that.
like to see some backup to show these prices, that's all. If we can get some backup in our package to show what, the estimates of these costs. I agree, it's a great system. And what we're gonna save is, we're not gonna have to send the trucks out to the dealer. Because that's where we had problems with the ambulances before, where we didn't have the tools and the technical data to make the repairs.
Right, it'll
So-
greatly reduce that, Joe, but there are still gonna be some instances where
I
you
know.
still have to send it out.
I know, but some of the stuff was so, the gas cap, you know what I mean? Or it needed coil packs or something. And
No.
every time you send it up there, the labor rate's $200 and some
Yeah.
dollars an hour, so
No.
it's crazy.
That's why, I was
Yeah.
surprised DPW didn't have this kind of instrument, and B,
Yeah.
why I was very grateful to be able to get it this year.
See, I'd just like to see the actual bills or the actual,
Yes.
quotes.
Yep, okay, very good.
Can I ask one, just a quick one?
Well, we haven't gone around yet, so thank you,
Oh, I
Joe.
thought we did.
Jennifer, did you are you all set? Okay, Ruth, you have another one, I'll let you
I
go.
thought, did we
Keep
go
moving.
around already?
Yes,
We went all the way around.
I
so-
didn't ask a question, but now that he mentioned that, I just want to make sure, on the Mitchell company that you're using, are you using that just because it covers all the types of vehicles? Could you do 2 different companies for 2 different types? Is that possible? And save money?
No, and it's not exactly like half all data versus Mitchell, but Mitchell's the only one that would do all the different equipment. And it doesn't do every item on every piece of equipment. That so far doesn't exist because of proprietary information that the manufacturers have. They don't want to release all of that.
I guess as they get older, then you can get it.
It's too late.
Well, no, it takes a long time, so.
Okay. So, we okay on this topic for now, or you want to spend more time on this budget?
No, I think we're all set.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, it's 10 o'clock. So, we can bow wave everything else and approve the minutes and continue on. Or we could hit some of these one-liners and get them off the plate. I'll just take the mood of the room, mood of the committee rather, sorry, on that. You can,
Well, next one should go pretty, like,
Yeah.
okay, let's keep moving then, that sounds good. So, next item on the agenda is number 11, discussion of street lighting budget. I'm all about getting these out of the way. So, street lighting budget, so we have it, on the bottom of page 9, now that I have the accurate, thank you, town clerk. Street lighting expense, and we have in here $120,000 as a request. And last year we approved 44,000. We speak a lot about this, conversion to LEDs and the wag and the back end of the tail and the, you know, I don't know, I've lost control of it at this hour of what's going on here. So, it's a big jump, that's all I know.
Yeah, why?
What's going on here?
And I rely on what Denise, the treasurer, told us, but the 44,000 turned out to be way underestimated. And that's more or less shown from when you look at the actual expenditures in the previous fiscal year, where, again, the budgeted amount was 44,000, but the actual amount was 104,000. So she's gone through all the numbers again to say what happened here, and just feels that we need to catch up. We still hope, and we are beginning to see the reductions in the cost of the electricity now that the lights are online, but we're still, having some hefty bills that need to be paid. So she felt it was necessary to catch up in this fiscal year. And that's
Okay.
just based on an analysis of the bills that we have been getting.
Is there, can the lights be turned dim?
I just asked that question 2 days ago, because we are getting complaints, or I noticed that there were complaints about the brightness of the lights, and we have the same problem in Warren as well. And I inquired, because it all depends, but it turns out that most of the lights we have here can in fact be dimmed. And now and usually what you need, I have learned, is that you need all the lights installed before you can start dimming selectively. So we should, as far as I know, now be able to do that, and we work with this organization, Prism, that actually organized and also does the maintenance, and they know that we're gonna ask or want to come up with a procedure whereby people can request that lights in their area get dimmed. The flip side is true too, that, when you have high hazard areas, for example, you can increase the intensity, or if you have an emergency in that location, you can, so it's good to have that feature, yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? We can go around, or if no one has, we can just kind of go around.
Just one question,
Well,
wasn't,
let's go, does anyone?
Yeah, just, is this negotiable, or is it, it's an electric bill, right?
It's an electric bill.
So, here, that's a huge jump and alarming and all, but we're gonna get the bill, so our best guess right now is 120, knowing fiscal year 18, we paid 104.
What's up?
I just, I remember we spoke about this years ago, this Prism. I wonder if the 44,000 was the pot of gold we were recommended, we were promised. I do wonder that, that's my only comment. My memory isn't good enough to remember, and I don't wanna get into it now. But Ruth, do you have any questions on this?
No, is this something, I'm just, on your capital plan, Jan?
On the capital plan, we have, and this is in the recurring capital
Okay.
items, I believe,
Okay,
where
and
we
how many
have
more
the financing of the acquisition of the equipment. And so that is a capital item that is being paid off over
How
the
many,
years.
how many years is this going to go
Where
on?
it is.
That is a long period of time, and we're looking at, whether or not it would make sense to try and pay that off and save the interest payments that we have. I asked Denise about that again the other day, and I am with her in thinking that as long as you have a low rate, it actually sometimes is smarter to do it on a financing plan. And she feels, I think this is around 2%, a little
Pretty
over
low.
2% or something.
Commercial, it's pretty low.
Mhm.
So
But the number of years you said was long, is there some, can you give me a ballpark on how, the number of years this is going to go on, where we don't, that we
I think
come
it was,
down on our
I was amazed at how long the term was. I think it was 10 or 12 years
Okay,
total.
thank you.
2% over that term is pretty low. Tom?
Yes.
Jay?
So the financing is not included in this 120,000.
Correct.
This 120,000 is for raw electricity.
Right. That's my understanding.
Well, without knowing what we paid, let's say, 4
What
years.
may be in there, by the way, is the maintenance fee that we pay Prism, which in and of itself is a lot lower than what National Grid was charging us. But, and it may be that that had not been counted in the budget allocation, I'm not quite sure.
So our best estimate now is it's gonna be neighborhood of 120,000. We don't know what it was 4 years ago when we initiated this whole thing.
Well,
We can
But
generate that,
LED
we
lights
can
on-
generate that information.
LED lights generally only use 10% of what we were using, so I'm still.
a lot of middlemen in here, Jay, I bet. Huh? A lot of people have their hands in that
There
pot.
must be, I just can't imagine how we are still paying 120 grand.
Remember, but it was really, really
Even if it was
What we used to pay?
300,000, we're not saving
I'm
anywhere
looking it
near.
up now.
What I'm gonna do is,
I don't
because
wanna waste time
I
on
think
it.
this may come up before the council as well, we should have a better recap of, what we used to pay
Yeah,
than what the expectations were when we entered into this program and what we're now seeing. I think that would be good to get it together in a summary, so.
I'm just boggled that it's still this high when we've done
Well, let Joe finish and then we're done.
everything we can to, what they said we would get.
I think you already said what I want to say. I'd like more information on this to see what.
Okay.
I can't remember what, I'm thinking like 300,000 was what we were paying years ago. It was really up there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm bringing it up now, and I'll report out in a minute. I don't want to hold the meeting up just to bring it up, but, okay, next item. Next item would be hydrant services, $750. It's my understanding it's a token amount according to Denise's email. Does anyone have any questions on this item? Great. That's item number 12. Check. The next item, Public Works, streetlights, hydrant. Next item is rubbish recycling. And I believe we circulated a copy of the contract. I think I circulated it out, right? Early on, maybe?
It's in your binder.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Jan. So, that's by contract, and, the number that, I believe isn't, I said this once, the number in the contract, no, I didn't say about this, but the number in the contract is the number in the budget, right? Is that accurate, Jan?
Correct.
There's no latitude, there's a number in the contract, a number in the budget. So, and this is the second or third year, the third or third year now, coming up, third or third year already, huh? Of this contract, I think it is, right?
So, and then we'd redo
This
it.
is the second of,
I know we had the discussion the last time, and I think we have another year with Mega.
maybe it's the second year?
It expires, I believe, in 20, but I'm gonna read it.
She said
Yes.
second, 3
Was
years.
signed in 2017.
So we'll be going out to bid again.
Okay. Great. So, so the contract amount equals the document. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, well, we just cranked through those. That brings us up to landfill operations, so let's just look at how involved that is before we get too ambitious here. Okay, maybe this is where we should break off, we should jump. Okay, so why don't we, the only issue with that is, then we have to drag, I don't mean to be derogatory like that, but we drag Rick back if we skip it. Where's my,
Which one is his, landfill?
let me just see one thing here.
If I may, the only thing that, if I'm not mistaken, jumps out on the landfill operations is that gigantic increase percentage-wise in overtime. And that's the remark I made at the beginning, that Rick has shifted some of the overtime from the road crew category, the regular staff, to landfill, because he wanted to show where the overtime is actually being incurred. So it was never shown under landfill operations, even though part of the overtime was being incurred there. But I think everything else is, sort of limited to pretty much well, the longevity went up here for the same reasons, I believe.
Repair is the biggest rise,
Yes,
and that's just because the bulldozer needs to be
yes.
and that's what it costs.
Well, currently this year, we spent just, so far, a little under 15, and it's a required piece of equipment to run the landfill. And it looks to me, by looking at this again, that the contract is an option if everybody agrees to renew it for another year, but it expires in 2020. But
For the trash.
yeah, I was backing up to the
Yeah.
contract.
Expires when in 2020 though? Sorry, I don't mean to be.
Yep, no, it appears to me that it's December 2020, but it might be June, because it goes through fiscal year as an option till June 30th. I think it's intended to mirror the contract, the fiscal year of
Right.
Tiverton.
Right.
And there are some adjustments based on the expected closure of the landfill.
Right. Okay. Thank
So-
you.
You said that the overtime went to the landfill because that's where it's generated?
There was a modest increase in the landfill overtime because I felt it was better to reflect the actual overtime was spent there, because when the gentlemen are on vacation that are assigned to the landfill, on Saturdays, the crew, which is not assigned to Saturday work, somebody has to fill in.
And that's mostly because you're picking up, you're running the landfill and you're also doing the yard waste, right?
Well, no, it's simply because the landfill crew is assigned to work on Saturdays, but they get vacation. So when they're on vacation, somebody on the regular crew has to.
Monday through Friday guy.
Yeah, I
So that's, yeah. So,
And if I may, on the next item, on-site wastewater treatment, that really doesn't belong
I
in
don't
the
think it's on
DPW
the
budget to begin with. but-
agenda, I didn't put it here because
No,
I didn't put it on the agenda,
it should
so-
be separate.
Separate, yeah. So I think we can count that as having done it. Does anyone have any questions on the landfill operations? And then we can call it done.
I just had a question on the bulldozer repairs. What exactly were you, was that just in case something break, or is there a plan?
No, that's for more of the undercarriage. We replaced some of the drive and the pins this year. And it's to, for instance, the tracks.
Wow, again?
Well, the tracks, I don't know when they were done last, but they're wearing out.
2 years ago.
Wasn't done right.
No, the
Front
tracks,
lines, the front lines, not the
Okay, yeah.
the spare doors, the front line doors.
yes.
Except it should be
Yeah.
exactly that.
Well, the tracks
Yeah.
is sort of all encompassing. For instance, the treads is
Yeah.
something that we have
Gravel
budgeted
bars.
for this fiscal year coming up, 20.
Seem to remember something about tracks from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we replaced them.
Well, there's a lot of pieces to the track.
Oh.
We did some more this
Yeah.
year.
No, we did the rollers, tracks. I don't think we did the sprocket, but I know they did the rollers, the tracks, the pins, all, even the grouser bars. So, I don't know.
Stuff ain't cheap.
Hey, you guys all set?
Yeah.
Let's go around quick. Is you all set, Tom? Or-
Is that a typo on the 2.785%? Should it be 2.885%?